Yeah, good afternoon, all of you. This is the second day for our 3-day online webinar, Ecosystem Restoration and Disaster Management. Yesterday, we are the listen our chief guest, Professor K. R.S. Sambamurthy Rao, sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Mizoram University, Professor Anil Kumar Gupta, Head Department of ERDCM Division, NIDM, Professor C. Raj Sekharan, President, SED India and Professor in BIT Bellore, Professor T. Pula from the Krishna Dev University, Anantapuram. He talked about the biodiversity threats and the conservation. And Dr. Sweta Vaidya, consultant NIDM, who is also the coordinator of this 3-day program with me on the climate resilience livelihood and the ecosystem-based TDR. In this scenario, today, we are again the 4 speakers. First one is the already joined Professor Joseph Selvin, Head Department of Microbiology, School of Life Sciences, Pondicherry University. He will talk about the exploration, exploitations, and the extension. And second speaker will be the Professor J.K. Garg, Director, Tribhuvan College of Environment and Development Sciences. It is the center of the Nalanda University. And third one is the Miss Fatima, that is the young professional in the NIDM. She will be the talk about the ecosystem and the community-based disaster management. And fourth talk, Mr. Harshit Sharma, young professional NIDM. He will be talk about the climate change impact on the ecosystem initiative taken to as the DDR. So with these words, I am hand over to my mic to my student coordinator, Ansita, to carry forward this program. Over to you, Ansita.
Thank you, sir, for giving this opportunity. Today, I would like to invite Professor Joseph Selvin for our lecture. Professor Joseph Selvin, he is currently working as professor and HOD at Department of Microbiology, School of Life Sciences at Pondicherry University. He holds a specialization in microbial genomics and bioprospecting. In his research career, he has published 116 papers in international journals. He has guided 13 PhDs and mentored 3 postdoctoral fellows. In his research career, he has won many awards. To name a few, I would like to mention Jawaharlal Nehru Award by ICAR, Indian National Science Academy Young Scientist Medal, UNESCO Team Grant and NPG Award in GRC in marine microbes, and the list goes on endlessly. Today, he will be giving a lecture on exploration, exploitation, and extinction. I hope this will be very helpful for us. And if any of the participants have any query, then he or she can freely ask in the Q&A segment. And now I would like to extend my warmest invitation to the Professor Joseph Selvin. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Ansita. Okay. Yes. So at outset, I thank Dr. Abhishek Chandra for inviting me to deliver this talk. So now I'll share the presentation. So 1 minute, please. So presentation is visible to you?
Yes, sir. It is.
Okay. So I'll be giving a brief insight about exploration, exploitation, and extinction. So we know exploration, every time we are going to explore and exploit, and finally we reach the phase of extinction. So I'll take you around some theories of actually what we are missing, or we just recollect the theories already we know that. So we will just start with the current scenario. We all know that is the climate change. Probably this meeting or this webinar also theming around the climate change issues. So this is one of the paper clip actually from the Hindu. It shows it explains that The climate change, we are usually say that the climate change is a modern, because of our modern life, the vehicles, all these reasons, the climate change. This is a news actually based on a publication in Nature. It explains that actually climate change is a gradual, not new, but it is happening in the past 2000 years. But now we are reaching at the most, means the advanced phase of climate change issues. So that's the reason we are facing the impact now. So it is not new, it is gradually raised and reached this stage. So now what will be the next? There are many publications and explanations are there. So there are, I believe there are many students are participating in this event. I taken one of the video to explain maybe 3 minutes about the impact of climate change. Then I'll come back to my talk. So climate change is not my talk, but still we should understand it. So you just listen this one.
Earthquakes, floods, droughts, heat waves. This is a result of global warming. According to NASA, 2015 is the hottest year on record. The United Nations reported that global warming is 95% caused by humans. Human activities release 37 billion tons of carbon dioxide every year. Since the Industrial Revolution, humans have increased their consumption of natural resources to up to 99 kilograms per person per day. That's 60 billion tons per year. We produce 3.5 million tons of trash a year, and our landfills are piling up every day. Around the world, there are 100 million landfills, and they contain wastes which are harmful to the environment. This way of living is not sustainable. Scientists have predicted that between 2030 and 2100, the temperature will rise by 5 degrees, triggering the release of frozen methane from underground, causing widespread catastrophic events. And mankind will be extinct.
So as per this this small short video, it explains that the mankind start to extinct from 2030. So now we have to explore, we have to see what's the way we can reduce or we can come out of this situation. So we should understand actually basic principle of the term life. Yes, we forget about the terminology, what's the definition of life. So see, this is actually, there are a lot of deliberations are there. This is one of the deliberations from Donald Trump. You might have heard about it. He was against the theories and the findings of global warming, and he speaks about the concept of global warming was created and for the Chinese in order to make US manufacturing is non-competitive. So that's the way. Definitely there are a number of views are there that maybe for the climate change or against the climate change. But you should see this is happening in Delhi. You people are mostly in Delhi around, I believe. So every December and January we are seeing the situation. We are saying that because of the burning at the farming yards nearby Delhi, that may be the reason. I don't know exactly. You know better. So climate change, we can believe that it is real, not a concept, not a theory. Okay, so now come to my talk. See, so we are speaking about climate change. What is the impact? We will say that rising the temperature and that impact on the elimination or the extinction of most of the life on the earth. But another thing we have to see that is known as the evolution. There is changes in the evolution pattern. Every life there is a dramatic change in the evolution pattern, particularly on the microorganisms. So very particularly on the pathogens. So the pathogens are actually evolving. We know that COVID-19, the situation we are now, that may be one of the reasons we are speaking through online webinars. But COVID-19, everybody knows that. I need not speak about it, but we have to speak about another important problem that is now hidden because of the COVID situation. That is known as antimicrobial resistance. Actually, WHO taken forward the issue actually in 2018-19. There are a lot of publications and efforts, funding, everything was going on. Even government of India also having a collaboration with the United Kingdom, and United Kingdom have invested 8 million pounds in India for antimicrobial resistance research. Such a heavily funded and highly very important research as well as discussions were going on. Because of COVID-19, it is now not in the mainstream of research or mainstream of media. But we should not forget, the antimicrobial resistance is already predicted that 10 million deaths in 2050. It is cost around 66 trillion pounds of economy that all over the world. So it is already predicted 10 million deaths, not 10 million, over that. You can just imagine a practical scenario. Most of us might have infected with COVID-19. Am I correct? Maybe probably 120 people are in this meeting. Almost many of us passed through the COVID-19 infection or coronavirus infection. So that infection time, did you just think about it? You have taken antibiotics or not? So we made actually a survey and we published one of our articles in Science of the Total Environment. India have a strong burden on antimicrobial resistance. The reason is those who infected, obviously, we know that it is a viral infection, but having the fear of the chances of secondary infection in the lungs, we have taken antibiotic as a precautionary medicine. So that type of medication, antibiotic without having any bacterial infection, we have taken antibiotics almost all, I'm sure. Or just you can personally verify whether you have taken or not. So you can imagine the burden of antibiotic. We have how much load we have consumed, or how much quantity of antibiotic we have consumed. So the consumption of antibiotic definitely leads to the incidence of antibiotic resistance. So you can imagine the level of resistance we can expect in India. Maybe probably this problem we can feel this problem, or we can hear this problem maybe after 2-3 years of maybe another 1 decade. So as according to WHO, the Asia is maybe the highly prone to antimicrobial resistance and its impact. So the second, the pathogens are evolving. I told there is a drastic change in the evolutionary principles. Particularly microorganisms are evolving. So the pathogens are evolving against the drugs. In another side, the pathogen itself is evolving. One good example is Zika virus. If you can see the history of the pathology or the microbiology, if you can see the history, the number of so many deaths or so many pandemic or outbreaks we might have seen. But see, none of the pandemic or none of the pathogen caused any deformity in the human head or human appearance. This is the first virus in our history we identified it able to deform a human, that is microcephaly. Microcephaly means small head babies. So these are all happening because of climate change. Because the pathogens are evolving, because the temperature is increasing. So that's the way we have to think about or discuss about it. So the climate change impacts are not only on the other life, it is drastically or it is highly prevalent in pathogens and microorganisms. So this is the microcephaly headed babies, but it is not common in India. It's not common in all over the world. It was very common previously in South America. Now it is subsided. The next, actually, we definitely have another trouble. But after COVID-19 itself have this question. You might have known that Trump have questioned this one, whether COVID-19 coronavirus is a natural virus or man-made virus. So this question still exists. You can see a lot of publication in Nature and many journals about this point. Some of them are favoring if there is a possibility of man-made virus. So other theories are just omitting it. No, it should be a virus evolved from animals like that. But it is sure we are still under the pressure of the chances of man-made viral attacks. So with this, all the troubles are going on. There are discoveries and explanations are going around. You might have heard that many times the water on the other planets, whether the water is there, any possibility of human survival on other planets, and people are searching for other planets for human settlement. These are all going on as alternate arrangement. Whether it is happening or not, we should understand the real basis of life, thereby we can survive. What is the real basis of life? We should know the three theories. So with these three theories, I will conclude my talk. The first one, everybody knows that is Darwin's theory of evolution. The second, not in the literature, but we should know that is Stephen Hawking theory of aliens. Whether aliens are true or not, that is not my talk, but we should understand what is the basis for alien, the terminology. The third one, hollow genome theory of coexistence. If you understand these three theories, definitely the life can survive even the increasing of temperature or pressure or the climate change issues. That we cannot prevent. But this evolution is possible, or survival is possible. The first one, Darwin's theory. So we all know this. Charles Darwin, born around Galapagos Island. So in a ship known as HMS Beagle, he is just going around the island. So what he observed, he just observing about, this beautiful creature, finches. So he is seeing these birds and beaks, the size of the beaks. He is seeing the beaks are evolving, or beaks, the shape of the beaks are continuously changing. So considering this pattern of changes, he taken this as the base for the theory of evolution. Okay, what is that theory? Everybody knows what is the theory. So the evolutionary theory explains that 3.7 billion years of biological evolution and 1 billion year of chemical evolution. So this altogether may be 5 billion years of evolution. Okay. So Darwin's theory explains about evolutionary theory, maybe 5 billion year. Okay, very good. Now you will see what is the conclusion of Darwin. So Darwin concluded about the theory of evolution and survival of the fittest. What is this theory? So you can imagine the 5 billion years into, just to convert the 5 billion year into 12-hour clock. So just imagine 12 noon. Now it is 2 o'clock, maybe 2 hours before the evolution start. I'm converting 5 billion year into 12-hour clock. Okay. So 12 noon, 12 o'clock, the evolution starts. And midnight, 12 o'clock, the evolution ends. Okay. So if you convert the 5 billion year into this clock, you will observe the entire creatures are created within this 12-hour time. Okay. Just for our understanding. So what is the interesting fact here is, see, quarter second before the 12 o'clock of midnight, the last species evolved. You know that the last species evolved is BR, the Homo sapiens. So now the problem here is, what is the drawback of this theory is, you can imagine, so quarter second definitely equivalent to millions of years. So the millions of years, quarter second before the midnight, the last species Homo sapiens evolved. Then the quarter second is sufficient for the evolution of other species, but that is not happened. The super creature, the final species evolved is Homo sapiens. If the evolution is true, definitely after human, something else should have evolved. So that is not happened. So these are the things makes the question mark on this theory. This theory is whether valid or not. Now we know that this theory is not valid. However, we should know the concept is valid. Yes, the evolution is real. The evolution is not unidirectional. If you see the phylogenetic analysis and phylogenetic tree or the tree of life, you will understand that evolution is divergent, not unidirectional. Evolution have no direction. We cannot say evolution starts from unicellular to multicellular. No, it is not that way. Evolution happening within the species and within the life, within the individuals, not happening between the individuals. Okay, that way, actually between the individuals are happening. That is only one model that is happening only in bacteria. That is known as conjugation. Okay, So this is the way we are saying that the evolution is not real. Yes, if the evolution is happening nowadays, this type of real modern life evolution might have happened. But one thing we have to understand, we read the statement from Darwin. This we should not forget. This is really happening. What is the statement? It is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent. Very careful. Not the strongest one or not the intelligent one, but which will survive. The surviving one is the one responds to the change. So now you understand that. So now the climate change, a lot of climate change, everything is changing. So the changing environment, if we are able to survive, if we are able to respond, if we are able to survive 50 degrees Celsius, 60 degrees Celsius, that is our survival of the fittest or successor. Okay. So Darwin clearly explains the species will survive which one responds to the change. So now I will explain one model. See, very interesting model. That is, already I revealed this one, antibiotic resistance. See, this is a bacterial population actually susceptible. So if you treat this population with antibiotic, all these bacteria will die. Okay, that is natural phenomenon. But you see, one or two cells are already resistant. They are able to survive if you even treat with this antibiotic. So now what's the point here is, once you try to kill the pathogen get evolved against that antibiotic, even the pest. If you use the pesticide, the pest will survive even after you are continuously applying the pest. So that's the way here you see a resistant bacterial population is evolving from susceptible population. So initially it is susceptible, and over a period of time, the resistant gene was transmitted into most of these susceptible bacterial cells. Thereby, at the end, you can imagine this is a susceptible bacteria, means these bacterial cells can be killed with the antibiotics, but these bacterial cells cannot be killed by antibiotics. So the bacterial cells are the pathogens which cannot be killed by antibiotics is known as antimicrobial resistance, or AMR pathogens, antimicrobial resistant pathogen. So now we have the generation, 4 generations of antimicrobial resistance. It means first generation is drug resistant. The second generation is known as multi-drug resistance. The third generation is known as extensively or extreme drug resistance. And the fourth generation is known as pan-drug resistance. Did you know that most of the population in India and many parts of the world, why I'm saying India is the second largest producer of antibiotics. And India is the largest consumer of antibiotics. You should not forget it. So India means we. So we are the largest consumer of antibiotics. So what will happen? So we continue to take antibiotics, the pathogens will evolve, the pathogen become pan-drug resistance. Pan-drug resistance means the antibiotics available in the market cannot treat or cannot kill that pathogen. So in case, there are already many disease conditions already established as pan-drug resistance. So that time, what is the last resort? The last resort is known as colistin. Colistin is a cytotoxic antibiotic agent, but it cannot be used in a normal condition because it will kill our cells also. So the last chance to save a patient or a person, we can use colistin. But did you know in India, actually, until 2019, the colistin was used as the growth promoter in poultry industry. So by considering this report, the government of India banned the use of colistin in the animal production industries. But we should have the knowledge, awareness of all these things happening around us. So, okay, now come to the second theory. First theory is Darwin's theory, okay, theory of evolution. And the second theory is Stephen Hawking theory of aliens. Now, whether aliens are there or not, we don't know, but we should understand that, see, Stephen Hawking, after Darwin, our time, yes, he also expired in 2018. However, we should know that he also a theoretical scientist. Darwin also a theoretical scientist. We have to be careful. So Darwin never did any experiment. That's the reason the theory was failed almost, but the theory concept was real. Very similarly, Stephen Hawking also explains about many theories. One of the theories, the advanced aliens could conquer and colonize our planet. That will be the end of our Earth for survival of humans. So once the aliens conquer the Earth, then the Earth may not be ready, or may the human population start extinct or completely extinct from the planet. That's the way Stephen Hawking given the warning. Now I'm not going to explain about anything whether aliens are there or not, but we should understand what would be the alien. That's the way I will explain. See, so you know that, no? Stephen Hawking is a person with motor neuron disease. He unable to move actually, but he has real family life and children, everything he has, and he able to speak through his eye movement. And he did lot of research and he written lot of theories, and he is well-known astrophysics in the field of astrophysics, and he received many awards. And we can say that our time Darwin actually, he is a theoretical physics and Darwin is a theoretical biologist. Now the question is, there are many deliberations. You can see the media in 2020 also. And thereafter also, people are saying, even last 3 months also, I am seeing many news about the aliens and the aliens survival in the planets. So there are, whether it is not proven, that is very important. It is not proven. These are all theories. But I am going to give you the basis of which one would be the alien. See, all the life on the Earth, all the life on the planet is made up of. You just imagine, I told you that we have to define the terminology life. The life means life should be made up of AGCT, adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. If a life made up of other than AGCT, what would be what we can call? Definitely, that would be the alien. Am I correct? Okay, so you should understand that all the life, even a bacteria, even a plant, even an animal, even anything is made up of AGCT. That's the reason you can imagine the human insulin is secreted in a bacterial cell. Humulin is a engineered, genetically engineered bacterial cell secretes human insulin. You can have a question, no? How human insulin a bacteria can secrete? Bacteria is not diabetic. Why bacteria is secreting? The reason, all the life on the earth is made up of these 4 alphabet. We are all related to each other. Either a bacteria, either a plant, either an animal, a human, or an elephant, anything, we are all related to each other. Only 1% we are dissimilar. 99% our life, our metabolic pathways, even TCA cycle is a central metabolic pathway. It is present in all the life. You cannot imagine a life without TCA cycle. So that's the way we are all metabolically, genetically, genomically related to each other. That's the reason you can see a phylogenetic tree, we have a common ancestor. We do not have a separate ancestor, common ancestor, but we don't know who is that common ancestor. We are still searching it. But the point here is, all the life is made up of adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. Then, 1 minute, it's not moving. Okay. You can see the Human Genome Project. The Human Genome Project reveals that the human is made up of 3.2 billion base pair. Base pair means 3.2 billion bases of nucleotide in our genome. You can imagine, just like computer language, the genomic language also, we are using the same terminology: kilo base pair, kilo base pair, mega base pair, giga base pair. In computer, people will use bytes, kilobytes, gigabytes, megabytes, gigabytes. The same, almost a similar terminology in genomic science. Where they use the word bytes, here we use the unit base pair, BP. Okay. Okay. So now a human is made up of 3.2 billion base pair units. Okay. So a genome means nothing. Just you take a whole 200-page notebook, haphazardly write AGCT, 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 should not repeat AGCT, haphazardly write ACGT or GCG, GGC, whatever the way you can write, that is a genome. So you can really, if you take a genome, the genome is a haphazard arrangement. Then you will find using the software, we will search for the number of coding regions, non-coding regions, fingerprint region, etc., etc. That type of approach or analysis is known as genome mining. So, okay, this is one side, keep in mind. So, what the point I wanted to explain is, I wanted to just reveal who would be the possibly aliens. The aliens would be when we have a unnatural nucleotide. I told you all nucleotide, all life is made up of AGCT. Can we create a life other than AGCT? This is simply a question mark, whether it is possible or not. Definitely you have a you have an answer that may not be possible, but I am sure that it is possible. Because now we have this extended alphabet of nucleotides other than AGCT. This is the dangerous situation. You can imagine a life is created other than AGCT, other than adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. So I keep to my talk title exploration, explore the genomes, exploitation, exploit the genomes, and extinction. I told you, once you start exploit this knowledge for the synthesis of unnatural nucleotides, and unnatural nucleotides are synthesized and create a synthetic genome. This is possible. Already synthetic cell is there. The first synthetic cell on the earth, or the first synthetic life on the earth, is known as Mycoplasma laboratorium. It is a bacterial cell developed by Greg Venter, a scientist called Greg Venter, who is behind with the sequencing of the first genome of a life, that is known as Haemophilus influenzae, a small bacteria. So Greg Venter was behind with the sequencing of the first life, and he, the scientist responsible for the synthesis of the first synthetic cell on the earth. So that cell is actually made up of not unnatural nucleotides, it's made up of natural nucleotide, but it is all the nucleotides are synthetically prepared and assembled. But I am saying that once the science moves towards the possible creation of unnatural nucleotides and synthetic genomes, where we have the chances of synthetic life, means the life with unnatural nucleotides, that is alien. So once we have the unnatural nucleotide based life on the earth, probably Stephen Hawking do not know this basis, but he might have predicted some sort of aliens will definitely make the human population extinct from the earth. Okay. Okay, now we see briefly about, maybe I have another 10 minutes. I'll just run about one more theory I should explain. Before that, I will explain maybe 3 minutes about the basis of genomics and metagenomics. So you see what is a genomics. So genomics means you can have a organism, a cell or anything we already in our hand, then just extract the DNA, then you go for sequencing. So you will get, as I told you, haphazard arrangement of AGCT. Okay. So that is known as sequence. Then after you go for assembly and annotation, where you have to arrange all the pieces of sequence into single sequence, that is known as genome. Then annotation. Annotation means you will identify how many genes are there, non-coding regions are there, fingerprint regions are there. If you identify throughout the genome, that is known as annotation. So assemble it, annotate it, genome is ready. So the second field is known as metagenomics. So here you will take a population sample, means just like a gram of soil, if you take, it has 10^10 bacterial cells. It is a huge population of bacteria. You just extract the DNA, same pattern, sequence it, and you cannot make a full assembly and annotation because it is a population sequence data, and try to partially assemble and annotate it. This type of analysis is known as metagenomics. So now you can imagine the diversity on the earth. You can say maybe 1.5 million species already described. 30 million species exist on the earth, that is not described, and we can cultivate the microorganism in the lab, maybe few thousand, and we cannot cultivate more than 99% of the microorganism present in the earth and soil and all the samples. So how we can cultivate them? Only possibility is metagenomic approaches. Then, how we are losing this greatest biodiversity? Definitely, we can say many reasons. We can say habitat destruction, introduction of new species, habitat loss, pollution, climate change, the industrialization, etc. But the major one is overexploitation. So once we continuously exploit the bioresources, definitely we will finally end with extinction of a particular species. Even a medicinal plant, even any natural resource, you know that you can continuously exploit even the fishery resources, even the open sea. You can see the continuous harvesting of fishes by continuous fishing vessels and etc. We know that the fishes are continuously declining. That's the reason people are moving towards aquaculture. So, okay. See, now on slide, I clearly explain how we can avoid this exploitation. See, mostly we are going to exploit these bioresources. Definitely we can reduce it. As the conventional approach, you can see, for example, simply I can take an example of medicinal plants. You go for a medicinal plant, you harvest the medicinal plant, then you can extract it, you identify the natural product. Then after the identification of natural products and the products out of it or the drugs out of it, then we are going for the analysis of the genome of the plant or the particular natural resource. And then we identify the genomic pathway, the enzymes in it, and the gene responsible for the synthesis of this natural product. So this is the conventional approach. So if you see the genome mining approach, once we have all the genomes in the database, now almost all genomes are available in the database, then you need not go back to the natural resources to exploit it. We need not go back and exploit it. Instead, what we can do, we go to the database, genome databases. You just identify the biosynthetic gene clusters. And using that biosynthetic gene cluster information, you can go for the recombinant synthesis or genetic engineering or gene cloning or the new field known as synthetic biology, known as genome engineering. So all these fields, you can apply these knowledges and techniques and technologies. Through that, you can get these bioactive lead molecules without exploitation of a plant or natural resources. Okay. Okay. So I told you the first genome was available in 1995. That was in the journal Science, that is Haemophilus influenzae. The Haemophilus influenzae genome was sequenced by the Greg Winter. After the many of his interventions, not only this sequencing, even human genome sequencing by a private venture, Greg Winter was responsible, and the first synthetic life Mycoplasma laboratorium was created by Greg Winter. So most of his intervention, the genomic science, is emerging as a very, very prominent technology. The databases are like exponentially growing with sequence data. So you can imagine 3 projects. If you consider, you will understand many things. The one is Human Microbiome Project. After Human Genome Project, now globally another project is known as Human Microbiome Project, and the Global Ocean Expedition Project by Craig Venter, and the Mammoth reconstruction. The Mammoth, you know that there is, you might have seen the Ice Age movies, one elephant, like the Ice Age elephants. So that elephant not exist. This is the elephant not exist today. So now people are trying to bring back the Mammoth again to the earth. So this is very interesting project. Now almost this genome of this Mammoth is available in the, actually I think 2022 January issue or February issue. If you see the Nature, you'll find the genome of this Mammoth they sequenced from the tusk. So once the genome is available, already many technologies are already exist that be able to bring back the Mammoth again to the earth. So I am also waiting for this project. So another greatest impact of climate change we can see on the corals. So we almost lost 30% of the coral reef across the globe. So now people are explaining, we are finding the way to bring back the corals to again a reconstruction of the new coral reef. So that's also possible only through the climate change resilience or the climate change or the temperature resistance coral reef. So this research also going on. Okay, and finally I come to the last theory in 5 minutes. Hollow genome theory of coexistence. Now what is hollow genome? See, so here you will understand it. This is environmental metagenome, means environmental microbiome. For example, we are in a room or we are in the outside, wherever we are surrounded by the microorganism. Okay, the air or the entire surface is surrounded. That is environmental microbiome. Now you will see a human is made up of 10 power 10 cells. A human All humans are made up of 10 power 10 cells. But our stomach is having 10 power 14 cells. The 10 power 14 cells are microorganisms. So now the human genome means our own genome. Very good. Now what is hollow genome? Hollow genome means my genome and my symbiont genome. My genome and my symbiont genome collectively known as hollow genome. So a human is made up of 10 power 10 cells. So the genome of these 10 power 10 cells are known as human genome, and the genome of the 14 cells exists in the stomach is known as metagenome. So a human genome plus metagenome collectively known as hollow genome. You got it, no? So now what's the theory explains about it? So now the modern theory is, if you evolve with your good microbiota in your stomach, good microbiota in your entire body, you can survive as a centurion, survive like 100 years. So the centurion life is possible if you have a good microbiota in our stomach. If you have a bad microbiota in the stomach, the person will have n number of diseases, including non-communicable diseases like diabetics, polycystic ovary syndrome. All these things are already have n number of applications. Even cancer is linked with microbiota of the person, microbiota of the individual. So now hollow genome theory explains that the evolution should be not an individual along with its own symbionts or the personal symbiotic microflora. So evolution of an individual genome and symbiotic microbiome are the metagenome collectively known as hollow genome evolution. So just finally 2 slides I wanted to explain the centurion's life on the blue zones of Earth. The Earth is having five cities or the 5 places: Loma Linda of California, Nicoya of Costa Rica, Sardinia of Italy, Ikaria of Greece, and Okinawa of Japan. These are the 5 places. These 5 places, obviously, the population survived 100 year plus. Means centurion life, obviously. Why it is happening centurion life? The understanding is mostly they have a good gut health is, they have a very strong gut bacterial or gut microbiota. That's the reason they have survived 100 years. So the evolution or the surviving on the changing environment is not we alone, along with our microbiota. We together evolve and survive. We definitely survive when any changes happening in the environment. Okay. So with this, I conclude. If you see the DBT have started, already started in 2019, that is a project, Pan-India project, Genome India Initiative. The Genome India Initiative, if you read, they have a human microbiome initiative in it, where they wanted to sequence endogamous population. Endogamous means really an Indian or the traditional tribal Indian population. Thereby we could understand our real food habit or the healthy dietary habit, healthy, very important, healthy dietary habit that is not influenced by modern lifestyle. So with this, I conclude. Thanks a lot for your listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your session. This was very insightful, and I hope everyone have enjoyed this. Now, if anybody has any query, then they can ask in the comment section, chat box.
Yeah, if you are having any query or any questions or any doubt, you can ask, because sir is here. Yeah, 1 or 2 questions. You can raise your hand so we can give you also the permit so you can talk at this one. Okay, I think there is no questions, but
Thank you.
yeah, sir, your talk is really good, and I'm really thankful you can accept our invitations. Very short notice. I am thankful to you, and you explain all the things, starting from the antibiotic resilience and its impact on the human health, then type of differences, then the biological evolutions. evolutions in the multiple direction, not in the unidirectional, you explained in the very well manner. Natural selections and the Hawkins theory, which will be the one of the most things and which is useful for all the students and this one. Then you can explain the genome, human genome project and the Momo genome project and the genome mining. So I think that this lecture is the one of the milestone of our webinar, and it will be the useful for the things.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And
Thank you. See you. Bye bye. Thank you.
and
I'm
we will be
leaving. Thank you.
spending. Thank you, sir.
There is a question in Q&A section.
Yeah. Okay.
I would like to ask, sir, what are the consequences of antibiotic resistance?
So antibiotic resistance, obviously, as I said, it will reach pan-drug resistance. Pan-drug resistance means yes. So if you read the CDC statement, none of the human can escape from antibiotic resistance. Means all of us will have any time of our lifespan, we will have the infection with antibiotic resistant bacteria. So the bacteria is pan-drug resistant. It cannot be treated, cured with the available antibiotic. That is the most dangerous scenario.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. See you. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye. Namaskar. sir.
I'm leaving. Thank you. See you.
Okay.
Thank you once again, sir.
Thank
Now,
you.
now for lecture 4, today we have Professor J.K. Garg with us. So Professor J.K. Garg is Director of Tribhuvan College of Environment and Development Sciences, Nalanda University, Rajasthan. He has been retired from the post of professor from Indraprasth University, New Delhi. He has a professional experience of more than 40 years in the broad area of remote sensing and GIS for ecosystem assessment and analysis, resource use, biodiversity conservation, wildlife habitat sustainability analysis, etc. He has carried out 14 major projects on ecology and environment, and he holds a specialization in geospatial technology for environment management and biodiversity conservation. Today, he will be enlightening us with his lecture on wetlands restoration and disasters. So here I extend my warmest invitation to Professor J.K. Garg. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Anshita. So I would like to share my, I want to share, I think earlier speaker has not unshared his presentation.
Yeah, sir. You can see in the bottom that is the green color. It's the up arrow.
No, it is there, share screen, but I think Dr. Selvan has not unshared his presentation. That is why this problem is coming. I'll ask him to unshare his presentation. It shows host disabled participant screen sharing. What does it mean? Abhishek, jara dekho kya problem.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
I cannot share, it says.
Okay, sir. Now I promote you as a co-host. Now you can see.
Yeah, now it has come.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So I hope I am audible also. Now my screen is seen, Dr. Srivastava.
Yes, sir. It is the visible and perfect, and voice is your perfect.
Okay. Now today I'm going to speak on wetland restoration and disasters. And this is the subject which I've been pursuing, especially the wetlands, for the last about 35 years of my life I have spent on working on wetlands beside other areas. Now, as you know, wetlands, when we talk about wetlands, basically what comes to our mind is water. And as you know that most of our earth comprises water, because about 98%, to be precise, 97.5% of the Earth's surface is covered by oceans. And we have very less fresh water, which is stored in lakes, swamps, and rivers, which is about 0.025%. And glacier snow and permafrost areas also low in them, about 17.25% of water which is available. Now the problem is that oceans are there, so much of water is there, and so many disasters are striking us. How this little water, which is locked in lakes and rivers, etc., and swamps, etc., can be put to use to reduce the fury of disasters. Now I'll go a little later into the definition of what are wetlands. But basically, when we talk of wetlands, they are low-lying areas where water accumulates, maybe during rainy season, or there the water is always present. They can be natural or man-made. Natural, people know that if you are from Indo-Gangetic Plain, there are various lakes, cut-off meanders, etc., oxbow lakes, which are of natural character. Then we have very large number of man-made structures besides reservoirs and these things. South India has tanks which are created to store first order water. Now they can be coastal or inland, and we shall discuss about what is coastal or inland means within on the earth's surface or on the landmass, and coastal near the coast where tides play significant role. And some of the examples are our floodplains, swamps, marshes, mangroves. Actually, for some of the students or some of the people who are there for the first time, they may confuse between what is swamp and marsh. I shall tell at this place that marshes are water masses which have herbaceous vegetation, while swamps have trees like mangrove. Swamps are there. They are not called mangrove marshes. Deltas are there, and lakes are some types of wetlands. Technically, a paddy farm is also a wetland. I will explain you about the definition. They can be of fresh water, salt water, or brackish water, or a combination of two. Combinations of two. Why it can happen is, I can give you example of Nal Sarovar. During monsoon and after monsoon up to October, November, it is fresh water. Then it becomes brackish water subsequently, and that is why it has huge biodiversity. Now, if I talk about wetlands and don't talk about Ramsar Convention and on wetlands, then it will not be proper on my part. Because this Ramsar Convention is the oldest environmental convention ever thought of, and it is the only global convention which focuses on any ecosystem like wetlands. The convention came into being on 2nd February 1971 in the Ramsar city of Iran, and it came into operation in 1975, and India joined this convention in 1982. And since this convention was held on 2nd February, so that's why annually we celebrate World Wetland Day on 2nd February. And this year's World Wetland Day theme was Wetlands Action for People and Nature, which encompasses what we are going to talk about. But the thing is that Ramsar Convention in 2017, their theme was wetlands and disaster. I will show you the slide a little later. Now, I will not go into the details of these Ramsar sites, but India has 49 Ramsar sites as of today, covering an area of 1093636 hectare. Number of contracting parties or countries, you can say, are 171, and Ramsar sites are 2430. So there are large number of sites And if you talk of India, then during the last decade or so, the numbers has increased tremendously from about 24 to 49 now. This I was talking about, that there was a theme on World Wetland Day in 2017, that wetlands for disaster risk reduction. Wetlands are there. How will they reduce the fury of disaster? That we shall discuss. But you should keep one thing in mind, that restoration of wetlands is not panacea for reducing disaster risks. It is one thing, but we have to have other techniques also deployed. Now, what is wetland? You know, as far as India is concerned, we are following Ramsar Convention definition, which says that these are submerged or water saturated land, both natural and man-made, permanent or temporary, with water that is static or flowing, brackish or salt, including areas of marine water, the depth of which does not exceed 6 meters. Now, if we go by this definition, then all water masses, except which are more than 6 meters deep in oceanic regions, are wetlands. You know, but the technical definition is that, you know, wetlands are the land transitional between upland and between terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem, and characterized by hydrology, hydrophytes, and hydric soils. Now, there are 5 wetland systems, like marine nature is there, where coastal wetlands, including rock shores and coral reefs, are there. Estuarine are there, including delta, marshes, mangrove. When we say estuarine, where fresh water and marine water meet there, you know, the brackish water density or pH varies from part to part. Lacustrine pertaining to lakes, and this also include our artificial or man-made, human-made lakes. Then we have riverine wetlands along rivers and streams, which I mentioned, oxbow lakes and cut-off meanders, etc. And palestrine means marshy swamps and bogs, like peat island, peatland, etc. Yeah. These are just to show some of the to you, you know, that how the wetlands look like in the field. On your left hand side, on the left, you have marshy land, as I was telling, that it has to have some herbaceous vegetation in the water. There are low-lying areas, and you can see some small aquatic birds are there. Then on your right side, upper part is Loktak Lake, only place or habitat or abode of Sangay deer, Sarvas LD or Sarvas LD in the world. Then we have lakes, and in the center you have swamp where trees are there, trees are growing. And on the right, you again have Dal Lake. Now on the other side, you have human-made wetlands where man has created, like dikes are there. Then they may create reservoirs or some other structures. And this, you can say, is a fish pond, and this is a man-made paddy land. I was telling that this also is very important, and especially in states like Kerala, it is very essential to preserve backwater, or as they are locally called, kayals. Their paddies are grown. Now, these are some more wetland types, and my earlier speaker was showing that the coral reefs are there, then mangroves you can see, then rocky coast is there. Actually, all these have functions. You know, if you do scuba diving, you can see beautiful bottom of the sea. You can go to Goa or Andaman Sea. It's little old photo, you know, about 6-7 years earlier. I went to that place, you know, in Andaman for doing scuba diving. Now, these are some other pictures. You know, this is the salt marsh near the coastal region. They also play a very significant role. And we shall see what all these wetland types do in reducing the fury of wetlands, this disaster. And this is just a passing thought. Every wetland is characterized by 3H: wetland hydrology, which is the driving force of any wetland. If there is no water, then it becomes dry land or upland. And hydrophytic vegetation, these are the two most important things which characterize any wetland. But in that sense, suppose there are no hydrophytic vegetation or hydrology is there, hydric soil also can tell you whether there is a wetland or not. Suppose there are histosols, then you can say certainly this is a bog or sphagnum dominated. Now, if I conceptualize the wetland, then as I said earlier, that climate and geomorphology, they shape the wetland. But wetland hydrology, wetland plants, and its catchment. Actually, most of the people undermine the role of catchment, and wherever this wetland restoration is going on, people normally try to conserve only the wetland part per se, and after some time the situation is same. I can give you an example of Loktak Lake. Water hyacinth was a serious problem. Wave bill was brought from Bangalore, but later on, it came again with vengeance. So we have to use judicious method to even keep the wetland in healthy state. Now, as you might be knowing that wetlands provide so many ecosystem services, and mind it that the basis of all this are supporting services. You must have heard about a Million Ecosystem Assessment of 2005, where services were categorized into 4 types of services, like provisioning services, water, food, fodder directly, which we get from the wetland or any other bioresource, and regulating services, flood water purification, climate moderation, pollination, etc. And you know that Indian people are very spiritual, very religious. Then they provide a solace also. People go to religious places for taking a bath, especially, Kumbh Mela, or every full moon day, people go to Haridwar and such, Ganga, etc. But the base of all these services is vegetation, especially biodiversity, nutrient cycling, and structural component, means within the wetland habitat types, primary production, and evolution, etc. If they are not there, then we'll not have any services, and the benefits which we derive, like livelihood options, water security, food security, recreation, etc. Besides DRR, which is very important, and that is the topic of the day, which I am going to further elaborate on this, and climate change mitigation. Now, these are some of the major threats which are faced by wetlands in India. You must have read also, many of you, that urbanization and land use changes. Delhi was supposed to have more than 1,000 wetlands, but since I am a technical member of Delhi Wetland Authority, so not all 1,000 wetlands are traceable, or more than 1,000 wetlands are traceable. Some 300-400 are can be found today. Now, conversion to agriculture after independence, there was a food shortage in the country. So many large areas, or huge areas, were converted for agriculture purposes. But one thing you should remember, that such area will have very low productivity unless you supply energy in the form of artificial fertilizer, etc. Then hydrologic alterations like dams, weir, etc. were constructed, and they also have altered. Many wetlands have dried up because water upstream has been stored, and they are not able to perform their designated functions. Deteriorating water quality is another serious problem, because I would say that we Indians are not that, we don't have that much good civic sense. whatever we find, we throw into the lakes and rivers, etc. And our sewage and during runoff, nitrates or fertilizer, those things get into the river, and our waters get fertilized, leading to eutrophication or enrichment of nutrients. There we get algal blooms and so on and so forth. Then there are many invasive species, as I mentioned, like water hyacinth, etc., which also have impacted our wetlands, beside global climate change, which is also creating some problems, especially for the larger wetlands. I will not go into the details, but the problem is that though we know the importance of wetlands, but globally since 1990 itself, about 50% of the wetlands have been lost, and 60% in Europe, and India has lost about 50% wetlands. Then another thing is that in the past 2 decades, 35% of mangroves have disappeared. Some countries have lost up to 80%. And the case of our Sundarbans and other places where we have mangroves, because of the population pressure, there are serious issues. Large areas of mangroves have been lost. Though our Forest Survey of India report says that there is an increase, that is because in the Gulf of Kutch, large areas have come up under mangroves themselves without. Now 20% of the world's coral reefs have been destroyed. The earlier speaker was saying that bleaching has taken place. That is again due to climate change, but it can also result from increased sediments in the nearshore oceans. And 24% of the remaining reefs are under imminent risk of collapse through human pressure. And similarly, we have lost about 1/3 of natural wetlands due to urbanization, agriculture expansion and pollution, etc. During the last decades, a study was done by Wetland International South Asia. And I will not go into the detail, but a lot of wetlands have been lost. I can give you an example that earlier I was staying in Ahmedabad on Judges Bangalore Road. There was a small pond, and due to construction of road, a barrier was got constructed. And once that road was created or made, then during the first monsoon rains, there was waist deep water flowing onto the roads because no drainage. There was no way for the water to go to the pond. And later on, after sewerage system, then this problem was resolved. So what I want to say is that wetlands are very, very important. And you should remember that a 1 acre wetland can typically store about 3 acre-feet of water or 1 million gallons, which is equivalent to 3.7 million liters. So we should keep one thing in mind, that if we destroy wetlands, there are many services, even groundwater recharge, etc. They will be impacted. And as you know that groundwater level is going down everywhere in the country, be it Delhi or Gujarat or Rajasthan or Haryana or Punjab. But the thing is that most of now I talk about disaster, some little bit of information about wetlands. Now disasters are growing more frequent, but according to UNO, 90% of all natural hazards are water related. And this is very important. It means we are going to have, or they are going to have significant and devastating impact on people's life if natural hazards or disasters are going to be like this, and where 90% of them will be water related. And this you can see, this graph, though not very clear, that it shows that climate and weather related hazards are growing, or disasters are growing tremendously. So this we should keep in mind, that most of the disasters are related to climate and weather and water. Even in 2000, 19, as far as disasters are concerned. Out of 479 disasters, 27% were related to floods and 12% were related to storms. Now, after this, what are the hazard reducing capabilities of wetlands? And this also is taken from UNDR 2020 report. And these columns are created just to use the space. Otherwise, they are joined like this. Wetlands and floodplains. Now you have to know this, that they mitigate waterlogging. Wetlands and floodplains control floods in coastal areas, inland river basins. Because suppose there are wetlands in the Indo-Gangetic plains like Oxbow Lakes, etc. First, they will be filled up, means they will store some water. Once they are full, then only water will flow to the other areas. Peatlands, wet grasslands, and other wetlands store water and release it slowly, reducing the speed and volume of runoff after heavy rainfall or snow melt in springtime. Coastal wetlands, tidal flats, deltas, and estuaries reduce the height and speed of storm surges and tidal waves. If we have wetlands, those who have been to Surat, you must know they are large, vast tract of coastal wetlands, flat, you can say. And there they don't allow water to come up to the habited areas. Marshes, lakes, and floodplains release wet season flows slowly during drought period. Now, similarly, coastal wetlands like mangroves, salt marshes, coral reefs, barrier islands, and sand dunes, etc., which I explained earlier, they protect against hurricanes. So, if you people remember Indian Ocean tsunami of 2004, where mangroves were there the damage was less. Where mangroves were not there, damage was extensive. And basically these ecosystems, coastal ecosystems, protect against hurricanes or cyclones. This hurricane is the word not used in our case. Tropical hurricanes are called cyclones, storm surges, flooding, and other coastal hazards. A combined protection from coral reefs, seagrass beds, and sand dunes, coastal wetlands, coastal forests is particularly effective. Coral reefs and coastal wetlands such as mangroves and salt marshes absorb wave energy, reduce wave heights, and reduce erosion from storm and high tides. In Kerala, this is a serious problem that there is coastal erosion taking place in Kerala and Karnataka as well. Coastal wetlands buffer against seawater intrusion and adapt to slow sea level rise by trapping sediment and organic matter. Non-porous natural barriers such as sand dunes with associated plant communities and barrier islands dissipate wave energy and act as barrier against waves, currents, storm surges, and tsunamis, depending on the magnitude. Now, diagrammatically, the same things are depicted in the diagrams, that what are the wetlands role they play in the inland areas, and what role do they play near the coast where coastal wetlands are there. So I will not go into further details. Now, after knowing little bit of wetlands and disaster, now why to restore wetlands? That is a basic question. As I mentioned earlier, that our wetlands are degraded, and once any ecosystem is degraded, they will not be able to provide their designated ecosystem services, especially in disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. Wetlands are considered as one of the very important agent for disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation, especially by the communities. And the main reason for wetland restoration is to bring back the capability of wetlands to mitigate disasters and help climate change adaptation. And they're also the key for sustainable development. So if water security is not there, earlier we have talked about what are the services they provide. There is, all types of services. You know about makhana, which we eat. We know about singada or trapa, what we get from, wetland. There are so many food items besides fishes and water, what we get. Suppose they are degraded or lost, then there is a serious problem. Then how do we restore them? Now this is a very old and this very important diagram. What does wetland rehabilitation and restoration involve? Ecological restoration, especially in the case of wetlands, refers to the process of assisting the recovery of an ecosystem that has been degraded, damaged, or destroyed. So basically, if you see, this diagram was given by Bradshaw. If original ecosystem is there, I don't know whether you can see where this cursor is there, that species and complexity means biodiversity will be very high. And if that is so, then there will be huge biomass which will get accumulated, photosynthesis will be there, nutrient cycling will be there, and wetland will perform all its designated functions. But if it is degraded, suppose in this case where the circle is blank, then wetland will not be able to perform its function. And we have to somehow bring back to this level, which will be called restoration. But that will be difficult. Basically, what we talk of it is rehabilitation, that we bring the wetland to a place where it can perform most of its functions. Means, we are able to increase its species diversity and other things. But if we don't take any action, then it may further degrade or it may somehow show some recovery as well. Now, during the last decade or so, a new term has emerged, nature-based solution. And that is very, very important. If level of ecological complexity is very high, then we get all ecosystem services or most of the ecosystem services from the wetlands. But if the level of ecosystem transformation is very high, then there are serious issues and we have to restore the ecosystem. As I said, we have to rehabilitate the ecosystem because now there is no original ecosystem or wetland available where man has not degraded it or used part of it. So we make a synthetic wetland to compare with it and we manage the ecosystem. This term restored, though most of the people use it, but it is wrongly used because restoration means to bring to the original condition, which is not possible because we don't know what was the original condition. And if everything has failed, then we create a novel ecosystem which may or may not be available. But restoration is not that simple as well. We need huge volume of data on water quality, biodiversity, time series data, which is hardly available. And even if it is available, then the data latency is more than 5 years. Now, the central question is how to make informed decisions for scientific management and restoration of wetlands. Let me tell you that most of the people, they waste the money. They don't work, and especially many of the NGOs, they take money for restoration of the wetlands because they will not use scientific information and scientific methods. For some years, they will show to the government or to the funding agency that wetlands have been restored. But after some time, again, the same story will be there because they have not taken steps to ensure catchment integrity. Not only the wetland integrity is important, but the wetland integrity depends on the catchment integrity. If we are not able to maintain the catchment integrity, then there is no way we can maintain good health of an ecosystem. Now, it is again, a detailed version of what information is required about wetland and, catchment. Actually, I've listed through remote sensing. Also, we can get like structural components, which I've named, basically the type of internal structure which exists in a wetland. Like there may be some islands, some vegetated areas, shore areas, or you can refer it to broadly habitat types. Now, what remote sensing can give you about the catchment is land use, road rail network, settlements, drainage, slope, geomorphology, soils, etc. When we talk of geospatial data sets, I'll just explain what all it's include. But remote sensing you must have heard, and I shall explain to you shortly. Now, this is huge data which is required on water quality, flora and fauna, and socio-economic data, because we have to follow landscape approach for restoration of wetlands. When I say landscape approach, you must be wondering what is landscape, though the term is very old, given in 1939 by Troll, but it got its maximum usage after 84, 85, when remote sensing and GIS, when people started using. Earlier, this thing was not there. And when we talk of landscape ecology, then human interaction also comes into play. Otherwise, there was no way for us to assess it, and people were doing very abstractly. Now, as I said, there is a huge link between catchment integrity and wetland health. And as I mentioned earlier, that nature of land use, whether it is forested, non-forested, or other land uses, anthropogenic activities like industrialization and all that, and its geophysical setting, they play a very great role in shaping water hydrology, water quality, wetland biodiversity, and wetland integrity. When I talk of integrity, it means chemical, physical, and biological, all types of integrity is involved. There is no time to explain in detail, but a wetland will be in good health if there is a balance between chemical, physical, and biological properties of that. Now, what are the methods and tools we use it? And as I said, that we have to use landscape. Landscape is a mosaic of interacting ecosystems. And you can assume in case of wetlands to be the catchment area or the area of influence, you can say. But many people take only the surrounding areas, and after some time, they would have spent crores or millions of rupees. But again, the story is same. Again, the wetland comes back into a very bad condition. So for this, we have to adopt adaptive management strategy. We have to get information on hydrology, water quality, biodiversity, structural component dynamics, habitat, assemblages, invasive species, etc. And we have to keep people into mind that what are the systems they are following. Suppose we go to tribal area, they have their own customs. We cannot treat them the way we treat urban people. Their thinking is different than what we think about it, and that also should be taken into consideration. Then catchment integrity, as I was mentioning, and based on this, we have to decide what should be our objectives, and then draw on restoration and rehabilitation plan. We implement it, then we restore it. But we have to use adaptive management, that after time, maybe after 2, 3, 5 years, we have to monitor whether our restoration is successful or not. You have to keep in mind that restoration is not one-time activity. It has to be followed up. If you don't follow it, then again the ecosystem will come back to a degraded state. Now, for rehabilitation and restoration of wetlands, we require wetland inventory at various scales. For individual wetland restoration, maybe maps on 1:1000 or 1:5000. They are required. And we have to do an assessment of ecosystem health and integrity, as I said earlier, physical, chemical, and biological, and catchment, buffer zone, area of influence characterization, and monitoring and integrity assessment. That we have to keep in mind, that if we are not doing it, and just for the heck of it or sake of it, or getting money from the government or some funding agency or bank, we do it, then not only you are cheating yourself, but you are cheating humanity. That we should keep in mind. But there are now systems available which have come to our rescue, and geospatial science, which is called geoinformatics, geomatics, remote sensing, GIS, and satellite-based navigation system, etc. Now, there is no time to tell you, but remote sensing is sensing from distance. Most of you use Google Maps, and on Google Earth, images are there on your lap. You can download or see very high resolution things are there. But remote sensing from eye, we cannot see the entire spectrum of information because we are making use of only visible part. But we get a lot of information in near infrared, thermal infrared, and microwave region of electromagnetic spectrum. Optical region, roughly from 0.4 to 1.1 micrometer. Visible is 0.4 to 0.7. 0.7 to 1.1 is near infrared. Then we have 1 to 3 other infrared, shortwave infrared is there. Then we have 8 to 12 or 40 thermal infrared. Microwave extends from millimeter to meter type of vacuum. Microwave can penetrate during clouds, during rainy season, and when optical remote sensing, due to cloud cover, they are not able to provide us information. Then we have geographical information system. So we know that remote sensing is a data providing system for technique, and geographical information system is data integrating technique. It is a computer-based system, which is, and now the softwares are available where you don't have to buy even data. And GIS software also, like QGIS, you can download and use it. The commercial softwares are also available, and if you have money, you can buy like ArcGIS. Now in GIS, you can store various layers, and when I say geospatially, means they are linked to particular coordinate system for the same point. Information is provided everywhere. Then we have satellite-based navigation system. You are having GPS in your mobiles. That's how you have Google Maps. You can navigate, but its accuracy is not very high, 20 meter. That's why sometimes you get stuck up. You go to a place which has no roads. But our own Navig or national, you can say, satellite-based navigation system will have 5 meter resolution, which is better than any other system available globally. GLONASS is Russian system, Galileo is European Union system, and BeiDou is Chinese system they have. But more importantly, you have to have domain knowledge of the subject like ecology, wetlands, geology, geography, etc. Then only you can make use of this data. Now the advantage of geospatial techniques is that you get synoptic view. It is, multispectral character, means we can see in various parts of electromagnetic spectrum. Repetitivity, sometimes satellite comes there after 16 days, 24 days, and sometimes even the same day we get information if, we have satellite placed in geostationary orbit, or most of remote sensing satellites are located between 500 to 800 kilometers from the Earth's surface. And we can get the information during day, night, all weather viewing capability. Earlier, these things were not available. That's why we could not do landscape level studies, and most of our efforts used to result in despair. Now, what information we can get from remote sensing, some may be spatial information and water quality information. You should keep one thing in mind, that pollutant species still is not possible using satellite remote sensing. Reason being, suppose you are having salt, and if you add water, if you add water to it, still the color is same unless you add huge amount of water. But if the water is colored, then remote sensing can sense it. Temperature variation to the tune of 0.1 degree Celsius can be studied through remote sensing. Then we can monitor phytoplankton, phytoplanktons, algal blooms, chlorophyll, turbidity, sediment quantitatively in conjunction with field data. But pollutant species, as I mentioned earlier, that you have to use ground-based studies. There is no way so far techniques developed. Biodiversity, habitat diversity, fragmentation, and habitat biotic assemblages. At one time, at this point, I would like to tell you whether it is terrestrial ecosystem or aquatic ecosystem, monitoring of biodiversity cannot be done using field-based methods. We have to use satellite-based methods. And there is a global GeoBan is there, which is a biodiversity network at global level. India also is having its own network. But if we are able to keep intact our habitats or our landscape, then biodiversity will be saved. It is not possible to do count of all species every year, but remote sensing can provide you indicators which tell you whether there is loss of biodiversity. As I said, catchment plays very important role, and a lot of information we can get from geospatial techniques like land cover, soils, landforms, etc. And we can prepare action plan in GIS, and we can generate various scenarios, and now at all skills it is possible. So these are some of the wetland types here. Earlier I have shown you through some field data, but now they are through satellite data. I will not go into the detail. But as far as aquatic vegetation in optical region, false color composite, it appears in shades of color, water in blue shades. If the water is having turbid, then you can see this type of color. If it is moderate and if it is high, if there is no turbidity, then it will appear like dark blue or blackish in color. This is photo of Chilka Lake, image of Chilka Lake. In this, it was the first Ramsar site in the country, and you can see various shades of blue, and they indicate different turbidity levels. And these are the mangroves which are shown. Coral reefs, as they can be seen through satellite data. Now about 15 million hectare area under various types of wetland exist in the country. In fact, the area may be more because of the mapping constraints. The mapping was done at 1:50,000 scale, where the smallest wetland map is 2.25 hectare. So smaller than those wetlands have not been mapped. So it is about 15 million hectare. And maybe in my opinion, it may be around 20 million hectare. And it includes lake pond, oxbow lake, cutoff mineral, as I was telling, high altitude wetlands, those wetlands which exist about 2,500 meter above sea level, MSL. Then we have riverine wetland, waterlogged areas, river stream, reservoir beds, etc. All these things are considered under natural wetlands. Then we have human-made wetlands, inland, salt pan because are there. Now in the coastal wetlands, we have lagoon, etc. All these categories are there. But you have to keep one thing in mind, that wetlands cover about 15 million hectare area. And you will be surprised to know that the first scientific inventory was carried out only in 1990. Prior to that, no scientific information was available. And we tried to carry out the first scientific inventory. Then we developed a wetland state information system for the state of West Bengal to now, of course, it is available for the entire country. And there is a national web portal also for wetlands. Some of you can go and see it. A lot of information is there. Then we went for conservation of wetlands through remote sensing GIS, and we took example of low creek lake resources, as I mentioned earlier. All this led to a spurt in use of satellite remote sensing for wetland resources and gas. Now we have to, there is no time, but through satellite data we can assess what is the health of any aquatic ecosystem. Like we can find out extent of aquatic vegetation, turbidity, chlorophyll, and we can determine trophic state index, which is very important and indicator of eutrophication of the wetland. But you must know that even simple things are very important. When you go to a village, a villager will not know about these satellites and all that. So to us, there is a small thing which is not costing even 100 rupees. And the Sacchi disk, created in 1865 by Sacchi and Angelo Sacchi, is a plain white circular disk about 30 centimeters in diameter, and it can measure water transference or turbidity in bodies of water. That gives you somehow, if it is calibrated, it will tell you that whether the wetland is having good health. And using satellite data, various models have been developed. Earlier, we tried for some lakes in Chhattisgarh, and using Landsat data. And later on, it was extended to large area. And some example I can show you that in conjunction with field data, it was possible to assess various structural component of wetlands in a particular reservoir, then turbidity level at various places in the lake. But if you are measuring in the field, then you can't do any, you can, especially you cannot map it. But using remote sensing and GIS, you can find out in which area turbidity is high, in which part of the wetland the turbidity is low. Similarly, chlorophyll concentration also can be measured using satellite data, and we can determine trophic state index, whether it is eutrophic or hypereutrophic or mesotrophic or oligotrophic lake. Accordingly, we can take restoration. Similarly, for river also, this was the work done by one of my students for his PhD. It is the area between Gadmukteshwar and Narora Ganga River, and for this also models were developed, and studies were made to assess erosion and deposition for different reaches during 1993 to 2017. And you can see from this, or using satellite data, that at some places erosion was taking place. You can see in convex areas, erosion was taking place, but in concave areas, what our observations told us, that in concave areas there was deposition of sediments. I think this is repeated. Similarly, for chlorophyll also, we could, you also know that there Ganga river has dolphins, and that is a great indicator of river water quality. If we're able to see dolphins, it means water is of drinkable quality. And in this area, dolphins are there, but their number is not very high. And chlorophyll concentration is very important for maintaining food chain. If food chain is there, then there will be fishes available, or otherwise, if chlorophyll is not available, then there won't be any fish. So for getting good fish catch, there is a need to have a full food chain or food web, as many of you would have studied. Similarly, we can study water quality index. So what I wanted to tell you is that using remote sensing and GIS, it is possible to assess health of various ecosystems, be it lake or reservoir or a river. Actually, I have shown you examples where either I have done work or my students have done work. So actually, I have not shown the work of others. Otherwise, you can see various examples on the internet. But what we are able to do is that it was possible to do inventory. it was possible to characterize where the wetlands are vegetated or turbidity ratings are there, and their health also could be assessed as far as wetlands are concerned. And this diagram actually I've shown you earlier also, because I want to emphasize many of you will be working on using wetland for disaster risk reduction. So you should know that if you are not following landscape approach, then you will not succeed. I can guarantee you that you will not succeed. So some work was done by my students for, this is wetland in Jhajjar, and this is also a Ramsar site, and you can study the dynamics of various wetland structural components. And this is very important wetland as far as this is concerned. And using remote sensing and GIS, trophic state index was followed. You can see that in various years, trophic state index also varies. Whether in summer it will be different, some part it will be eutrophic, some part it will not be eutrophic or mesotrophic or oligotrophic. And that tells us about what are the conditions in different parts of the lake. And then we can, describe catchment area. Now, as far as this wetland is concerned, I'm just forgetting its name. It is not seen from the above. That it is possible, these are the satellite images, false color composites from satellite, Landsat satellite, that in various years what has happened. And this shows that in the buffer zone, most of the area is under agricultural area. And various types of land uses were mapped in this, like agriculture, settlements, scrubland, grassland, other water bodies or wetlands may also be there. And actually in this, this is name I was forgetting, but it is Vidavas wetland. Now it has come to my mind. And its influence zone can be mapped, or the buffer zone, which is very important for its survival. But if the catchment is forested, then we can make use of landscape metrics. And this is Renuka Lake. It is also a Ramsar site. And using such tools in GIS like FragStats, which can be used even QGIS, which is a freely available software, or you can download ArcGIS. There also it can be used. So what is important is that it is possible to study the health or integrity of the catchment, like whether the patches have increased. If the number of patches have increased, then what it means is that there is fragmentation of the forested area. If the edges have increased, that also indicates, and sometimes there will be perforation due to logging acts. But once this is done, when we are making any restoration plan, we have to design wetland resources information system, which will have resource database and some other databases like census reports, which are there, some statistics which are there, and data derived using satellite data and field data. And using this, you can generate various types of information. You can do spatial analysis. You can map various situations, analyze it for implementation. And once you are done it, actually I don't want to go into the detail, but using this landscape approach, we did work for 5 Ramsar site: Somorari, Loktak, Deeperville, Kevladev National Park, and Nal Sarovar. And using this technique for wetland per se, we told that these are the kind of actions which are required. This is Somorari, it is Ladakh now. You see that turbidity is very low. This is Sokhar. It was declared a Ramsar site last year. It has high structural complexity. And this you can see this even turbidity varies even from the imagery itself you can make out. And various types of maps were prepared like geomorphology, land use, soil, structural map means lineament, etc., drainage, road network, and based on this, within wetland feature were also identify like deep water, shallow water, dense vegetation, especially it was the case for Sokhar, moderate vegetation, sparse vegetation, and both in 2002 and 2005, actually this study was completed in 2007. That's why data is little old. But what I tell you that based on this information, trophic state index of the lake was estimated, and you can see that at some places you find this green color, which indicates that this area is oligotrophic. And then we used various landscape matrices, and we came to the conclusion, since now this area is not accessible also, otherwise that no action is required. Because we, through a simple technique like if dissection index is moderate, trophic state index is eutrophic, and this kind of logic was applied, and we came to the conclusion that this wetland does not require any action plan. But on the other hand, this is a case of Guwahati or Deeperbill, which is a lake located in the city of Guwahati. It is a remnant of Brahmaputra river, and whole seaways of the city is dumped into this wetland. And you can see in this, there are various parts where you see various types of eutrophic level. Then we, like earlier times, dissection index of the Deeperbill was identified. Where it is low, you see white areas. If it is moderate, then you see this type of color. And if the dissection index means more fragmentation has taken place, this is indicated in this book. And based on this, we devised a simple technique to find out that which area requires which type of action. Like in some areas, you find that biophysical parameters should be regulated, like water quality, etc. And improve water holding capacity. Some dredging may be required. At some places, you don't require any action, and at some other places, removal of vegetation or dredging. Now, after having done this, then there are various steps. I will not go into the details, but what are the steps we do when we make any restoration plan. This figure is from World Bank 2017. At first, we define the problem, project scope, and objective. This will require a lot of data, as we have discussed, and even data analysis. This flow chart or this schema will tell you about what is your financing strategy. Then you have to conduct various risk assessment, and then we have to develop nature-based risk management strategy. As I told earlier, now the maximum emphasis globally is to go for nature-based solution or ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction. Then we have to estimate the cost, benefit, and effectiveness, because money is required for doing anything. Select and design the intervention. What type of intervention will be required? Then we have to implement and construct, and then monitor also. Well, as I said earlier, that if you don't monitor it, then after some time, there again may be a degradation, and a lot of things will happen. Degradation would have taken place, but we have to keep one thing in mind, that restoration is a continuous process. We have to continuously monitor it. It is not one-time action. And this slide shows you that stepwise, that what you have to do and what technique you can apply. Like wetland inventory, you have to make use of remote sensing, wetland characterization, prioritization, remote sensing, available biophysical data, wetland delineation. It is best done using remote sensing, plus some field data. Ecological survey and assessment, hydrology, water quality, biodiversity, human activities. It has to be done using field, survey, etc. Then what are the stressors? Suppose there is a wetland which is suffering due to water quality. There may be some industry which is directly dumping its waste into the river or the wetland. Then if we don't know that, then we'll not be able to solve the problem. So that has to be first off. Then wetland dynamics, condition, health integrity, remote sensing in conjunction with field data. Then we have to choose reference wetland, means we have to synthesize a wetland, because as I said earlier, no single wetland is available globally, which we can consider that this was the condition existing hundreds or thousands of years. So we have to synthesize it based on our knowledge of the land or the area. Then catchment condition integrity assessment based on geology and landforms, hydrology, biodiversity, human activities, and then ecological survey plus remote sensing and ground-based methods. Then we have to keep one thing in mind, that we have to involve the stakeholders, those people who have stakes, local people, experts, government agency, from the very beginning. If we don't involve them, then it will be considered a government project. And if local people are not involved, they will not own it. So we have to create something like Friends of Wetlands kind of situation. And we have to identify local people. Some students may be there who will be there to look after the wetland once it is restored. Then we have to identify the objectives and consultation with stakeholders and studies and preparation of restoration plan. We have to take cognizance of what our policies are, because now as far as India is concerned, we are following 2017 rules in conjunction with 1986 Environmental Protection Act. Then, funding agency we have to identify, and then we have to identify field activities, what we are trying to carry out, and monitoring, as I said earlier, that we have to continuously monitor it. And post restoration activities, we use remote sensing and rapid ecological survey. Now the last slide, actually I come out, and so far we have discussed what are wetlands, what type of disaster can be mitigated using wetlands, and what are the shortfalls. You should keep one thing in mind, that as I said, that sometimes wetlands, though they are considered low-cost solutions, but suppose there is a seashore, where up to seashore there are buildings, then there we cannot apply this method. So there we have to create embankments or create walls, etc. So we have to keep in mind that we have to choose the best method. But as far as wetlands are concerned, research carried out so far has resulted in inventorying, monitoring, and assessment of health of wetland ecosystems. For wise use and restoration of degraded wetlands, as I said earlier, if wetlands are degraded, they will not be able to perform their degraded functions. They are the basically sponge of the Mother Earth. If they are not there, then there will be serious consequences. And for enhancing their ecosystem services and aiding in resilience following are the needs. Use of landscape ecological approach for conservation and restoration. This I emphasize again and again. Some of you may be trying to use it. Please use landscape ecological approach. Otherwise you will not be successful. This holds true for even restoration in mountainous area where forests are involved. There also landscape ecological approach has to be followed. Otherwise we will not get good results. Now there is a need to develop land metrics and indicators for assessment of health. Whatever we have developed, they are still to be tested, and literature doesn't have many such studies. So there is a need to use these types of metrics for more number of sites. And still, we keep people outside. We should involve people. We should include people which are dependent directly or indirectly on the wetland. And involvement of stakeholders from initiation of the project, local involvement, a must for getting ecosystem services, on sustainable basis or personal basis. If we don't include all the stakeholders, then there can be issues. Now, this is my last slide. So I thank you for your kind patience, and thank you very much for listening to me. Now, Dr. Abhishek,
Yes, sir.
my lecture is over. So should I unshare or what do I do? If
Yeah.
some questions are there, I will be
Yes,
very
sir.
happy to answer. There are some 4 questions.
Yes,
which
sir.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
There is a few questions, sir.
Thank you, sir, for
Uh,
such a wonderful talk.
Actually, one person has said that it would be very useful to wetland enthusiasts if Professor my name could share the presentation file link in chat box. This presentation is available with the organizers. Since it is about 20 MB file. So I don't know whether, in fact, I've never shared in chat box. If you can, actually my email is very simple, personal email. You can write to me. I will send to you, Sudeep. gargjk@gmail.com. You send your email ID. I will send you the presentation. So
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. So you can write to the sir. The email ID is very simple. And apart from the 2 questions, Ansita, you can read out.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful talk. It was very enlightening for us to learn about wetlands and their types and the threats faced by the wetlands. So we have 2 questions in the Q&A box. First one is, how exactly wetland help to reduce natural disasters? Could you please elaborate on this? This is asked by Dr. Purobi Nath.
actually, it is a very good question. Basically, in my presentation also, I have discussed that how wetlands, suppose they are inland wetlands or coastal wetlands. There are basically 2 types of major wetlands. Now we take the example of lakes or, depression, low-lying areas. Basically, these wetlands are insurance against hydrometeorological disasters, like flooding is there or cyclone is there, or in case of coastal wetlands, suppose there is a sea surge, sea storms are there, tsunamis are there. There they provide the first line. If they are, they will store water in them. That is why they are basically sponges of nature. If they are removed, then there will be flooding everywhere. Now, suppose I know about Delhi, especially East Delhi, where this temple is there, and entire East Delhi area, this was low-lying area, floodplain area of the wetland. If there is a water amount which increases during rainy season, then there are issues. There will be water logging and all those kind of things. But let us assume some oxbow lakes were there. Then first that water will spill into them, and then it will flood the populated areas. Similarly, in those areas like Indo-Gangetic plains, we have very high density of oxbow lakes and cutoff meanders. West Bengal, followed by Bihar, has highest number of floodplain wetlands. And there, if they are not there, there will be a disaster. So if I'm able to answer your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There is one more question. What are the measures taken in ecological restoration and how successful these measures are restoring the degraded land?
Actually, there are mixed examples. We have success stories and we are not so successful. In large number of cases, suppose the wetlands are in forested areas and their degradation has taken place, then very easy to rectify. But suppose there are degradation in plain areas, or you can say Indo-Gangetic Plain or Southern Peninsula, then there are issues. Because until unless, suppose you take the example of Delhi, again this Najafgarh drain and Shadra drain, they are the major culprits for polluting the Yamuna River. Otherwise, I remember that some of my known persons or relations, they used to stay in Daryaganj. Every morning they will go and take bath in Yamuna River. But now you can't see even Yamuna River. There are not many, success stories, but for coastal wetlands, yes. There are in Tamil Nadu, Pichavaram Islands, these are there. Then in Gujarat also run, greater run of Kutch, Gulf of Kutch, lot of success stories are there. But as far as small oxbow lakes and cut-off meanders are there, not many case studies are available. That is the case.
Thank you, sir. I hope it has cleared all doubts of participants. Now moving
Yeah,
further.
just a moment. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you so much, sir, for investing, accepting our invitations. And you are already explained the so many things: the swamp, marsh, mangrove, delta, lake, and the footprint. I think all the participants is now clear with the definitions. Now there will be no doubt and the identification of these things. You already mentioned that the World Wetland Day and Ramsar story, and when the India will be the enter into this participants nowadays, it will be very useful for the students to watch, because our nearby area, the Sultanpur National Park, is also
Yeah.
converted into the Ramsar site. So you can visit and you can see the wetland.
But
And
Sultanpur is not very good example. Abhishek. Pani nahi hota bahut.
yeah, most of the time, but now it will be converted into the Ramsar site. Yeah, okay. You are the mentioned that the height is not exceeded at the 6 meter, then it will be useful for the wetland. You given to the so many things, example of the water, wetland rehabilitation and the restoration, wetland management, conventional approach to the GIS, remote sensing conventional of the wetland, and use of the wetland ecological approach for the conservation and restoration of the wetland. So I think that it will be useful for our all the participants. So thank you so much, sir, for your enlightened and the useful lectures. And
Thank
I
you
think
everybody for giving a patient.
yeah, and your blessing will be always with us.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, sir. Over to you, Ansita.
Thank you, sir. Moving further, I would like to invite Nishita to take this event forward. Over to you, Nishita.
Thank you, Anshita. I would now like to take this opportunity to invite Ms. Fatima Binte Amin. Ma'am is presently a young professional at National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, New Delhi. She has done her master's in disaster management from University of Kashmir, Srinagar, Jammu and Kashmir. She is working on different papers and participated in various national and international trainings, webinars, and conferences. She is an experienced professional skilled in emergency management, public speaking, cyber law, and leadership. She will enlighten us about the ecosystem and community-based disaster management. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nishita. Thank you for having me today. And I'm really thankful to the ma'am and the team for inviting me for that particular lecture. I like to share my screen. Okay, you just have to enable me to share my screen.
Yeah, okay, just a moment. Pardon.
Yes.
Yeah. I think now.
Yes. Please let me know. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So yes, I want to share about the ecosystem and community-based vulnerability assessment, actually the CBTM, or what you call the vulnerability assessment of the community. So first of all, talking about the if we go with the, what is vulnerability and from where the concept of vulnerability came from. Going about that, it is like the concept of vulnerability. It is originated from the social science in response to the pure hazard-oriented perception of disaster risk in 1970s. And by what UNDRO gave the typical definition of a vulnerability is it is the degree of loss to a given element at risk or set of elements at risk resulting from the occurrence of either the natural phenomena of given magnitude and expressed on a scale from 0 to that means no damage to the 1 that means total damage. And since most of people, even Dr. J.K. Garg has spoke about the ecosystems, and I am going to somehow relate ecosystem with disaster management, or what we can say the how community will be like helping us, or how community is being affected by particular disasters. Like we will talk in the further slides. We know that most of disasters are caused due to the neglect. Either we say that there is a neglect or uncontrolled exploitation
Yes,
of
yes.
natural ecosystem. Well managed ecosystem, if we manage
Yeah, yeah.
ecosystem,
Yeah, so many time I am given
can
to
help to
the
mitigate disasters like landslides. Either we talk of landslides, either cyclones or floods. And how from the perspective of disaster management, it is
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the main focus of disaster management should be on the development, the protection of ecosystem, and
Yeah,
the
that's why I am
sustainability
saying
of
that
ecosystem.
when the I is speaker, then you can interrupt.
uh,
And when you is speaker, then I
Ecosystem
will interrupt.
can just a minute,
Yeah,
ma'am.
you both are the
I
coordinator
So could
because
you just mute
he knows me every
your
time
mic?
I'm the student of him. So it will be very difficult for me. Okay, no problem. Okay.
So yeah, thank you. So what I was talking about is that the ecosystem can act as the first time of defense for vulnerability of communities against some of the disasters. Uh, if we can see that, like how a community became vulnerable to disasters, and what is the impact, or what is the climate change doing in this, and how with the help of ecosystem degradation the communities are becoming vulnerable. And when there is a increased in risk reduction, the community faces the consequences of that. If we see that the when there is an increase in frequency of either the frequency or the intensity of climate related disasters, for example the floods, the cyclones, the landslides, what they do, they exacerbate ecosystem degradation. Okay, so climate change is one of the main thing through which our community suffers, and through which the community is becoming more vulnerable to disasters. And the increased disaster risk, how it is making communities more vulnerable, is that it undermines ecosystem and community resilience, and exacerbates impacts of climate variability and change. And when the community is degraded, that is it the ecosystem, and it's the degradation of ecosystem, it triggers more disasters, and the resilience is reduced, and the more if we can see that the more release of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. So this the general concept of how communities is being affected by disasters. We know that every community faces the risk of being stuck by a disaster, either one type of disaster or another type of disaster. And how ecosystem, with the help of ecosystem management and some strategies, we can reduce the risk. Ecosystem management is correlated with the climate change adaptation, and that is related with the disaster risk reduction. We see that the increase when we increase the resilience of ecosystems and communities to the climate change, it and its impacts, it protects them from disasters and sequence carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. And in the disaster risk reduction, talking about that part, it increases the resilience of ecosystem to disasters and complements climate change adaptation efforts. And about the adaptation one, it increases the resilience of ecosystem to climate change impacts and supports disaster risk reduction. This is the climate change impacts, and these are the, from the left there are some of the climate change impact, and on the right side there are some climate change mitigation approaches. Okay, see, when we are having the population increase, due to that our ecosystem is degraded, and when our ecosystem is degraded there is loss of biodiversity and the ecosystem service, and there is a loss of human well-being. Some social disruptions occur that leads to the increased pressure on ecosystem. That means there will be poor biodiversity and ecosystem. There will the ecosystem will be not protected in that way. These are the some of the drivers of impacts of ecosystem degradation. And about the ecosystem based adaptation, if we go through the ecosystem based adaptation, what happens that the ecosystem resilience is like increased and the vulnerability is reduced. So when this happens, there is secure biodiversity and ecosystem service. The our human well-being is like continues to go. There is a sustainable secure economies, and our ecosystem protection and management is completely in a good biodiversity and ecosystem is so somehow protected in that manner. Coming to the next slide is like, why do we need to assess the vulnerability to disasters? It's a we talk about the ecosystem point of view, talking in that sense, like why we need to assess assess vulnerabilities to that particular disasters. We know that a vulnerability assessment can serve as the basis for developing strategies for reducing the risk from disasters. And the assessment we are going to do, it will what actually will do it to us, like it will help a community to estimate the number of people at risk once we go to a particular place. For example, if we are going for a somehow we are assigned to go to the field trip, and we have given the work to assess the number of losses, the people at risk, the infrastructure to the damage. So from that particular, when we go to do all the assessment of that particular area, we just come to, like we are having the vision that yes, these number of people are being impacted, this is the infrastructure loss that happens to the particular disasters. And in future what we need to do, that is the only thing we are doing, the vulnerability to any we need to assess the vulnerability to any kind of disasters. And also what more we do, we identify the number and locations of buildings at risk. And moreover during disasters, what we see that what are the critical infrastructures that are at risk, such as in critical infrastructure we include the hospitals, the schools, and some are elderly committees are there. So we just identify those people and we take them to the proper or safe location. And after that, we examine the communication links and networks that are vulnerable to the disruption during and after a disaster, including the informal networks of communication such as church groups. And the community-based disaster, when we do the community-based disaster vulnerability, it helps us to communicate, helps us in different communities to identify vulnerable populations. Since we don't know how many elderly people, small children, or pregnant ladies will be that in area. So when we do the community-based vulnerability assessment, we came to know the exact numbers or exact number of people that are stuck in that particular disaster. So when we are going to assess that do the assessment of that particular disaster, we are helping to prepare assessment of that community, or to see the loss of protective environment due to the disasters. Like when disabled, all basic services like the flood, food, water, sanitation, health, all protective environment, all all of these things come to our mind, like okay, we just need to think about whether we are having food, is the water available if we are stuck in a flood. So because during flood you can't drink that particular that water, because if you drink that water, like it will lead to some other disasters. You maybe suffer from some kind of some epidemic diseases like the diarrhea, the other like some of the viral diseases, you will be affected by them. So this is that is why we are doing the vulnerability assessment of disasters. And same, the key tasks that we are involved in conducting the vulnerability assessment is like again below, like we have to develop a vulnerability assessment team that is represented by the community. We have to make the inventory maps, like the different disaster threats, that okay, we had made the inventory. The flood is occurring now on every second year of after 2 years the flood is occurring. So what change we need to make, like if we need to shift the particular set of population to the safer zone, we will only go to that point unless and until we had made the inventory maps. And also when we are making the inventory maps, we have to see the physical vulnerability population and facilities. Also we have, when we are making the inventory maps, we have to see the social vulnerability populations, and we have to seek and integrate community input. Also we have to create an accessible and understandable a product that assemble and analyze information and maps of the community's vulnerability to disasters, and use the completed assessment to develop and implement strategies to reduce communities vulnerability. That is our main point. Why are we doing communities vulnerability assessment? It's only to implement or to actually to reduce the vulnerability of community to the any kind of disasters. There are some of steps that we use while doing the vulnerability assessment. There are some of the steps, like first some 8-9 steps are there. Like first we do getting, I'll be discussing every step separately in the next slide. So first is like we are getting started, we have to identify hazards like likely to affect the community, identify the map of greater risk, and identify the map physically vulnerable people, and proportional, and identify the map socially vulnerable. And we have to make the map of environmental threats and the community ground truthing. And when we are done with these things, we are putting it all together so that we can to know about the main vulnerability of the community. Talking about the first step, that is getting started, and what we do in that step is like we organize a group or team that will be responsible for conducting the assessment, and we will identify vulnerable population in the community. And if there are some existing plans or reports or studies or technical information, we will collect that information that will be suitable for us. So if whenever we are struck by any calamity, we that time we will be prepared for that. We will be having our groups will be having some teams at the because if god forbidden, if we are stuck by any kind of calamity, we may be having the proper way to get out of that particular disaster. And once we are done with the getting through with, we will start to identifying and ranking the hazards. So what we will do, we will list the different type of hazards that we are that have occurred in the community, or and after that what we will we will rank each hazard based on the frequency or severity of the risk. What does that means? It means when we are mapping a particular area, we will identify, like if there is having an earthquake, if for we can say that the hazard should be ranked according in terms of their frequency and occurrence and the severity of the impact hazard. That means first we will see the hazard, how many times the particular incidents has occurred, and what was its frequency. And depending on the frequency of that hazard, like if there is possibility of occurring this particular hazard if yes, we will sort like select the categories, it will be like likely, unlikely, and not even in that one. And severity, like if the hazard is catastrophic, so we will divide it into the critical one, and some that will be not in that phase, we will divide in them that phase. And overall ranking, we will just give a overall rank of the hazards, like to the high, medium, and low. This is how we can identify and rank hazards. And map area of greater risk, like we have to prepare a base map of using throughout the vulnerability assessment. We identify and map specific areas in the community that are vulnerable to disasters, as I was talking about the floods or landslides or earthquake, because India being the disaster prone state, we are having like we are facing different kind of disasters. We are having the earthquake, cyclone, we are having floods, landslides, we're having avalanche, we are having snowstorms. These are some of the disaster that we are talking about. These are the natural one, and also the anthropogenic one, in which we are responsible for them, some of the forest fires. So to map areas of greater risk is like to identify and map location in the communities that are the greater risk from hazard, identify, and we will like with the help of some GIS technologies, we will help us to map these areas that are on the greater risk. Okay. The next one is map based on the physical vulnerability. We will make the inventory and map the critical facilities that are currently located in the hazard prone areas, and we will estimate the number and value of residential structures currently located in the hazard prone areas. And after that, we will estimate the number of people who live in these structures, and we will estimate the number and value of residential structures that will be located in hazard prone areas at some time. For example, if the people are living in more than 10 years of building, they may be having that time that area would not be vulnerable to that. For example, the floods wouldn't have been occurred in that particular time, but now due to some climate change or due to some anthropogenic activities, there may be cases of having landslides in that area or having the floods in that area. So looking into that manner in future and the number of people who will live in those structures, we have to physically map the vulnerable buildings. And we will map the according to the social vulnerability, that is we will see the contact non-profits, faith-based some NGOs, some government agencies for information on the number, location, name, and capabilities of social vulnerable people. And we will prepare a map of social vulnerability, like because a lot of work is done by some NGOs. They are doing work that we can take data. Since in the first, when we were starting with the first slide, in the first step, I was telling you about the getting started. Like if we know, if we are having the information, that will be helpful for us for any community to do the vulnerability assessment. So we just have to look all the data and collect all the data to save our community from any kind of disasters. Since we all know that community is the first responders to any disaster, so community faces all the disaster until we can't wait for the like some of the NDRF or SDRF people to come and save us. And because it is like everyone in the society should be prepared for every kind of disaster. We should know how to survive in the floods, we should know how to survive when there is an earthquake, we should be knowing about the rules if we are constructing a building, we should know that what kind of structure is the engineer taking the structural measures and all. We just have to look everything into it. And after that, we will identify and map employment centers. Since most of people are working, so we have to list of of employees or employment centers in the community, including some current and projected future employment locations, and estimate the number of employees. And we will map location of employers and highlight those that are located in some, if we maybe that the area that is hazard areas. And we will you want to focus on major employees only. So that is how we can identify and map those employment centers. And most important, since we were talking about the ecosystem, also map the environmental threats. Like we will list all facilities in or near the community that treat, handle, store, manufacture, or transport substances. For example, chemical wastes that may pose that may pose threat to the health and safety of people, and mark the location of these facilities on the base of map, highlight facilities located in the hazard prone areas such as flood plains, and also determine the number of people that could be at risk if there were an incident of spill at one or of the facilities, and rank the facilities in order of the severity of the threat. And community ground truthing, since if we have collected all the data, now it comes to the time of ground truthing. And what does that mean? In that ground truthing, what's our task is, we conduct public forum to validate or ground truth the information represented on the map you have prepared in step 3 to 8 that I was talking about as a part of vulnerability assessment. Make revision as necessary based on the participants input. Once we had made the map, we will show the somehow who's having, since we are involving community members and we are taking people from the community, so yes, they will be like, yeah, the information you have corrected is all correct. These are the people, these are the area that is more vulnerable, so we will just collect all data and make preparation to involve interested participants in future task force activities. And putting it all together, once we have gathered all the data, we will consolidate ground truthing information into the accessible database and produce a final report that identifies the communities hazard, socially and physically vulnerable population, and possible strategies for mitigation risk, and present final result to the community, and incorporate into the comprehensive plans, land use plan, emergency management plans. So coming to the conclusion part, it's real that global climate is changing at unprecedented rate, resulting in the considerable consequences on ecosystem and human well-being. Some anthropogenic releases of greenhouse gases, mainly carbon dioxide, has warmed the Earth's surface. We all know that, where its concentration has risen more linearly for the last, if we see the map of 100 years, from 1906 to 2005 by 0.74 than the corresponding period. Sorry. This has resulted in occurrence of extreme weather events such as rising sea level, recurrent droughts, intensive cyclones and floods, etc. It is uncertain to predict the potential of developmental sectors if environment change continues. And we know that development and disasters are correlated. When there is a development, there is disaster. When there is a disaster, there is a development. Unless ecosystem becomes resilient enough against environmental disturbances, no life could exist in this planet. Accordingly, ecosystem resilience should be built through adaptation and mitigation strategies so as to reverse current emissions as well as to adapt to live with uncertainty. That was all from my end. Thank you. I'm open for all the questions.
Thank you, ma'am, for enlightening us with your knowledge. It was very educational to know about all these management strategies. Thank you, ma'am. If anybody has any questions, please drop it in question and answer box.
I think there will be no questions. So
Same, I guess. People have
yeah,
understood the
and the
topic.
Miss Fatima with us in the next day also. So if you are having any question, otherwise you can directly take the email ID and ask to.
Sure, sir, definitely.
Yeah.
I'll share my mail ID in the chat box. If whoever is interested can mail me.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having
Okay,
me.
thank you so much, Fatima. And we are moving towards the next. Nishita.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. I would now like to welcome Mr. Harshish Sharma. Mr. Harshish Sharma is currently working as a young professional in National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, New Delhi, and has a vast experience in the field of administration. He has held various important administrative positions earlier in NIDM and has worked in the Vigilance Department of Indian Oil Corporation Limited. He was also an integral part of the WHO project and UNICEF project in nationwide quality of care network. So will educate us about climate change impact on ecosystem and initiatives taken towards DRR. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Nisita. Am I audible?
Yes, you are the audible host.
Yes, first I would like to thank both the organization NIDM and Sri Venkateswar College under Delhi University for organizing a training program on such an important issue, an important topic, because we all know that in which manner the ecosystem is important for us, the environment. We all know the role of environment and the ecosystem in the field of disaster management, which type of factors are impacting our environment and the ecosystem, like the global warming, the rise in a rapid rise in the global temperature, etc. I will discuss these all the things on my slides through presentation. And I also would like to thank Dr. Abhishek sir and the organizing team for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and views on the topic. So I will start my presentation by sharing my screen. Can you confirm, is it visible?
Is it coming, but not clear?
Okay, wait, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, now it is coming. You go to the third slide. Okay, now the first slide.
Is it moving, sir? Can you confirm? Is it moving?
Yeah, moving.
Okay. So, dear participants, now we will start with the presentation. Today, my topic is climate change impact on ecosystem and initiatives taken towards DRR. I will explain the initiative taken by the government at the national level, at the international level, and also the initiatives taken by NIDM. So first, we will most of the things have already been covered by our distinguished speakers earlier. So we will start with the definition of the climate change. What is basically climate change? So climate change refers to a long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. These shifts may be natural, but since if we will notice, since 1800s, the human activities have been the main driver of the climate change, primarily due to the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, gases, etc. And next we will move ahead to the term adaptation. So what is adaptation? So I would like to put here one example that we all know that climate is changing day by day due to some human activities, as I have previously said. And so we all have to accept these things. So our actions toward to live in this, because this is our need to live, to survive on this earth, on this current scenario of the temperature, as the temperature is rising day by day. So our actions which have been taken by us to adapt the actions, the measures to be taken to adapt the situation is called adaptation. So adapting to life in a changing climate is called adaptation. And so what is the goal of adaptation? So the goal of adaptation is to reduce vulnerability to the effects of climate change. Next, we will move ahead to the terms. What is the difference between mitigation? What is the difference between the term mitigation and adaptation? So mitigation is to reduce the causes of climate change, the actions to be taken to reduce the causes of the climate change. We will focus on the causes. And in the term of adaptation, we will focus on the manage the impacts of climate change, the actions to be taken to manage the impacts of the climate change. So if we will take the examples, so in mitigation section, you can take the sustainable transportation. As you all know that most of the people may be aware, that in Delhi, the government has taken an initiative to release the start the electric vehicles, electric buses. The DTC, the Delhi Transport Corporation has started this scheme. They are using the electric buses to reduce this impact on our environment. Next is clean energy. We can use the wind energy for this. Energy efficiency, we all can use the solar energy to mitigate the risk. In the adaptation portion, we all can use the disaster management and business continuity, the plans, the guidelines we all can refer. Flood protection. If we are preparing a house or a building in a flood prone area or in any flood prone area, then we all have to make sure the construction with with ensuring the proper guidelines and the proper guidelines of the procedures of the government for the flood protection and the infrastructure upgrades. For the we will discuss about the infrastructural upgrades. We all have to know about the zonal codes to refrain from the risk of the earthquake also. So this was all about the mitigation and adaptation term. So next we will discuss that we all have discussed what is climate change, what is its impact, what is basically this. But how can we say that the climate is changing day by day and it is imposing its negative impact on our environment? What are the evidences? Because science believe in the evidence. So what are the evidences on this? So as we all know, the current Earth climate warming trend is extremely like over 95% probability is due to human activity, as I have previously mentioned in my first slide. So what are the evidences? We all can notice the global temperature is rapidly rising day by day, and the warming oceans, the shrinking ice sheets and snow cover, extreme weather events. We all can notice that the number of floods are increasing day by day, the number of heat waves, cold waves, cyclones are increasing day by day. So we all can notice the extreme weather events. Ocean acidification also we all can notice. So these are some evidences so that we can say that the climate is changing day by day and it imposing its negative impact on our environment. Next slide, moving ahead, we will discuss what is basically the ecosystem, what the ecosystem is. So an ecosystem is a geographic area where plants, animals and other organisms as well as weather and landscape work together to form a bubble of life. So we all can mention here the biotic and abiotic factors. Like in the biotic factors, we all can mention the living things like plants, animals and other organisms. And in the abiotic factors, we all can include the rocks, temperature and humidity. So this was all about a brief of ecosystem, what ecosystem is. Next, we will move ahead that what will be in the impact on our environment if the global temperature rise beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is a very small term that if 1.5 degrees Celsius will increase, what will be happen with our Earth? No matter the temperature is increasing day by day, no matter what will be happen by increasing 1.5, because this is we all can see this is very small term. But if we will focus on the impact, then we will know that in which manner this small term impose its impact on our environment. Like if the global temperature will rise beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius on our Earth, then over 70% of coral reefs will die at 1.5 degrees Celsius. And at 2 degrees Celsius, virtually all reefs will be lost. And over 6 million people live in coastal areas vulnerable to sea level rise at 1.5 degrees Celsius. And if we will focus on 2 degrees Celsius, this would affect 10 million more people by the end of the century. And sea level is also sea level rise will be 1 meter higher at 2 degrees Celsius than 1.5 degrees Celsius. And if we will see the species, so insects vital for pollination of crops and plants are likely to lose half of their habitat and at 1.5 degrees Celsius, and it becomes almost twice as likely at 2 degrees Celsius. The Arctic Ocean being completely bare of sea ice in summer would be a once per century likelihood at 1.5 degrees Celsius. But this leads to a once a decade likelihood at 2 degrees Celsius. And as I have previously mentioned, previously stated, the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events, the droughts, the storms, and the other like heat wave, cold wave, and the number of cyclones, number of floods will definitely be increased. So this was a brief diagram that what will be happen with our Earth if the temperature will go beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius. So we all have discussed about what is climate change, what are the issues with what are the impacts of the climate change on our environment, on our ecosystem. So we all have discussed the issues, but what is the solution? What are should be the approaches to mitigate the risk of the climate change? So we all have to phase out the fossil fuels like coal, oil, gases, and other things. And we all have to focus on renewable energies, like we all can use the wind energy, we all can use the solar energy, and we all have to move ahead to the green technology and electric mobility. Like as I have previously given the example of the initiatives of Delhi government, that they have released, they have started the electric vehicles, electric buses in Delhi for the public transport. So we all can use the electric mobility, electric vehicles, and we all have to focus on the curb deforestation and most of the reforestation, plantation we have to do, and reduce meat consumption, more plant-based diet we all have to do, curb population growth. As we all know that population is also very big problem in India, not only in India, in globe also. But if because we all have the limited resources by our nature, we all have given the limited resources by our nature. But if the population will rapidly rise, then the demand will definitely be increased because of the increase in the population. So we all have to focus on the curb population growth, and carbon capture and storage technologies we all have to use. So these were some basic solutions which we all have to follow these approaches in our day-to-day life. Next, we all have to discuss these all things, that what are the approaches, what are the solutions. Next, I would like to mention here that what this is the last this 2 or 3 slides will be not only for the ecosystem or any environmental degradation and etc. This is our these slides will define you the roles and responsibilities of the local authorities, of the private sector, community groups, volunteers, and citizens at the time of any emergency or at the time of any disaster. So at the time of any disaster, what are the roles and responsibilities of local authority? Because according to me, the role of the local authorities is very, very important, because in the disaster management sector, for dealing with any disaster situation, the local authorities, the gram panchayats, the municipal bodies at the local level, at the ground level, because the community is the first responder at the time of any disaster. So I think the local authorities, the Panchayati Raj institutions, and the municipal bodies are the bridge between the affected community, who are the first responder, and the central government, because the community will directly report, give the data, give the report to the local administration, district administration. Then through them, this report, this information will be circulated to central government. According to this information, all the funds will be released. If the from the ground level, the information will be precise, then only the central government can rely on this and give the exact fund or any other schemes or any other support to the affected communities. So the roles and responsibilities of the local authorities very, very important in any disaster situation. So what are the roles? So provide assistance to the collector in disaster management activities, because in each and every district, the chairman of the committee of disaster management related issues is the collector or district magistrate or the commissioner of the respective place, organization, district. Ensure the training of its officers and employees and maintenance of resources so as to be readily available for use in the event of a disaster. Because the training of the officers and employees is also very, very important. The capacity building, we are trying to focus here about the capacity building of the employees. If we do not give any training, any capacity building courses, capsules to the employees, then at the time of the disaster, how can they deal with this situation? Because they don't know anything about the disaster. How can they deal? How can they will deal at this disaster situation? They don't know about the rules and regulations, the funding system of the disaster management and the schemes of disaster management. So how can we believe that they will do an effective disaster management, prepare an effective disaster management plan for in the preparedness phase also? So we all have to ensure the training of its officers and employees, and the maintenance of the available resources is also very, very important. Because I would like to cite here one example. if we have purchased one equipment to deal with any disaster situation. If I will give you one example of my area. If my area is flood, I belong to Uttarakhand state, so my area is flood prone area basically. So there are the national highway is there. So if in due to the flood prone area, in each and every monsoonal season, the flood will definitely be come. So due to the flood, the infrastructure will definitely be damaged in each and every year. So our administration have purchased one bulldozer to repair for the primary repairment of the road, which will be used at the time of the disaster. But if we will not do a proper maintenance of this bulldozer, so at the time, and we will wait for the disaster, and we are not maintaining doing the proper maintenance of this equipment. So when we all need this equipment to do the use of this equipment at the time of disaster, so we this will not be in workable condition. So this will be difficult to the district administration to deal with the situation of disaster situation or emergency situation. So the maintenance of the equipments, the maintenance of the available resources is also very, very important. Next, ensure that all construction projects under it conform to the standards and specifications laid down. Each department of the government in a district shall prepare a disaster management plan for the district, because as per the Disaster Management Act, which was enacted in 2005, so this is very, very mandatory to prepare each and every district a disaster management plan as per their vulnerability of the disasters, respective disasters. Next, carry out relief, rehabilitation, and reconstruction activities in the affected area within its jurisdictions. So these were some basic roles and responsibilities of the local administration. Next, what are the roles and responsibilities of private sector? The private sector should ensure their active participation in pre-disaster activities in alignment with the overall plan developed by the DDMA. As I have previously mentioned, that the district administration should prepare the district disaster management plan. So when the plan will be prepared by DDMA, so the private sector organizations should give their reviews, should give their knowledge, share their knowledge to collaborate with DDMAs to prepare the district disaster management plans as per their available resources. Next, we will discuss what are the roles and responsibilities of community groups and voluntary agencies like NGOs. So local communities, groups, and voluntary agencies, including NGOs, should actively assist in prevention and mitigation activities under the overall directions and supervision of district disaster management authorities. And if we will take the citizen, as a citizen, what we can do, what are our duty at the local level? So it is a duty of every citizen to assist the DDMA, district administration or district disaster management authority, in disaster management activities whenever our need or our aid is demanded, generally for the purpose of disaster management. So these were some roles and responsibilities of local administration, private sector organizations, NGOs, and as a citizen, how can we help the district administration in disaster management activities. So we all have discussed various things. Now I would like to mention here which type of initiatives have been taken by our government, the government's initiatives towards DRR with the focus of climate change, basically. So first I would like to mention here the Sustainable Development Goals. So the Sustainable Development Goals or global goals are a collection of 17 interlinked global goals designed to be a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. The SDGs were set up in 2015 by the United Nations General Assembly and are intended to be achieved by the year 2030. So the goal 13 of SDG directly relates to the climate action, and the key elements are strengthen resilience and adaptive capacity to climate related hazards and natural disasters in all the countries. Improve education, they will also focus on the education, the awareness of the people, raising and awareness, increasing awareness, human and institutional capacity building, and adaptation impact reduction and early warning, focus on the early warning system, because we all know that early warning system, in which manner early warning system helps in disaster management sector. In the current time, we all can notice that in the rainy season, we know that in next week the rain will come or not. So this is the one example of the early warning system. So this will definitely be helpful in the disaster management sector. So to improve the early warning system is also one key element. Next one is integrate climate change measures into national policies, strategies and planning, because planning and preparedness phase is also very, very important in disaster management sector. Next, promote mechanisms for raising capacity for effective climate change related planning and management in least developed countries and small island developing states, including focusing on women, youth, and local and marginalized communities. So this was all about the SDG and the climate action, the SDG goal 13, which is related to climate action, its key element we have discussed. Next initiative is, the Paris Climate Agreement, the international treaty we all can say. So the government, so the Paris Climate Agreement is an international treaty on climate change, which was adopted in 2015, and 196 parties, basically countries, are the part of this climate change, Paris Climate Agreement. So what are its important key elements of the Paris Climate Agreement? So first one is limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. As I have previously mentioned, the dangers if the temperature will go beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius. So limit the temperature. And the second element is review countries' commitments to cutting emission every 5 years, because review is also very, very important. Next element is provide climate finance to developing countries. So these are three key elements of the Paris Climate Agreement. Next, at the national level, we will discuss in a brief about the Prime Minister's 10-point agenda on towards DRR, disaster risk reduction. Our Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji has released the has given the Prime Minister's 10-point agenda towards DRR during the Asian Ministerial Conference on disaster risk reduction in 2016. So he has given the, as you all can see on the slide, that these are the 10 agenda points which may be incorporated in the disaster management sector. The first point is all development sectors must imbibe the principles of disaster risk management. So the multi-sectoral approach is being focused on this, and in each and every development schemes, we all have to imbibe the disaster risk reduction component. And the second agenda point talks about risk coverage must include all, starting from poor households to SMEs, as the government have also taken on initiative like the Jan Dhan Yojana, we all can say, and the Suraksha Bima Yojana, Fasal Bima Yojana, crop insurances, and the risk coverage schemes like. And the third agenda point talks about women leadership, and greater involvement should be central to disaster risk management. As we all know that the women should be engaged on the disaster management activities, because the women, not only in India, at the globe, we all can notice that in each and every step, the women can do each and everything, not only in disaster management sector, in each and every sector. So we all have to do, we all have to engage the women leadership in the disaster management sector also. I would like to cite one example here. We all should also involve the women, respective women in the NDRF, National Disaster Response Forces, SDRF, State Disaster Response Forces. As per the directions, I would like to give you one example. Before 2021, I think most of the people are aware of that one term is National Defense Academy. So after clearing 12th class, there is one opportunity to be an army officer in Indian Army. But before 2021, this position was only open for the boys. No girls can apply for this post. But as per the directions of the Honorable Supreme Court, from 2021, the girls can also apply for this position through National Defense Academy after clearing the 12th class. This is also very good opportunity. So the government is also taking various initiatives, good initiatives I would like to mention here, to focus on the women leadership. Next one is invest in risk mapping globally to improve global understanding of nature and disaster risk, because risk mapping is also very important. If we are, I would like to mention here also one example. If we are living in one flood prone area, so if we are not mapping the area, if we are not prepare the list or database of this area, that in which manner, in which type of disaster the area is vulnerable, we don't map the area as per the vulnerability of the disaster for the respective area. So what will be happen? We are unable, we will be handicapped at the time of the disaster. We do not know that which type of initiatives should be taken at the time of the disaster. So risk mapping is also very important. Next, agenda point 5 talks about leverage technology to enhance the efficiency of disaster risk management efforts. As we all know that in which manner the technology can help us not only in disaster management sector, in each and every sector. Today is the time of the technology. We all can notice at the time of the current scenario of the coronavirus, COVID-19, how in which manner the social media platforms and the technology helped us in refraining from the boring time of the social distancing. The technology have helped us, the social media platforms have helped us for the entertainment and also for getting the precise news, the latest news. And we all know that the government has also taken the initiatives of they have released the Arogya Setu app through the mobile phone technologies. We all can use this app through mobile phone technologies. So this is also one example that we all can do, incorporate various things through technology in disaster risk reduction towards DRR and in disaster management sector. The agenda point 6 talks about develop a network of universities to work on disaster related issues. So if we will do the explanation of this thing, so we all have to engage each and every university in the DRR sector, in the disaster management sector. And basically this is about the collaboration, that knowledge sharing. So if we have the good knowledge sharing universities channel, so our students will at the basic, from the basic level, they will get to know about the disaster management, what disaster management basically is from their graduation level or post graduation level. So at the time when they will be in working condition, they will join various companies, corporate sector, any government sector. So they will definitely get to know in a very precise manner that how can they deal the disaster at the time of any emergency situation. So this is also very important point. Next one is utilize the opportunities provided by social media and mobile technologies. I have previously given the example of the mobile phone technologies and social media platforms by giving the example of COVID-19. Next 8th point is about build the local capacity, because I have previously mentioned in my previous slide that the local government is the community is the first responder at the time of any disaster or any natural hazard. So the local capacity building is also very important. So we all have to focus that if we are doing this training program today, so we all have to focus that this information should be go to the community, the first responder, so that they will be aware of these things. How can they deal? What are the rules, regulations of disaster management? How can they will deal at the time of the disaster? The 9th point talks about make use of every opportunity to learn from disasters, and to achieve that there must be studies on the lessons after every disaster. So I would like to give one example of the NIDM. I will share later the NIDM's initiatives. Taken by NIDM towards DRR and towards the documentation of the disaster. So this point talk about the documentation of the proper documentation, precise documentation of any disaster, so that the we will not repeat the mistake which we have done in our previous disaster. In the preparatory phase for the next step, we will not repeat this mistake. So the documentation is also very important. Next, the last point is agenda point talks about bring about greater cohesion in international response to disaster, because this is directly related to the international treaties, the international collaborations, the knowledge sharing between the international each and every countries, because the nature of the disasters are same. So I have previously mentioned the treaties related to the climate change, how our government has taken the initiative towards climate actions. Next, I would like to mention here that the initiatives taken by NIDM. So as per the agenda, with respect to the agenda point 9 of the PM 10-point agenda, NIDM has documented past disasters in a very good manner, as you all can see on the slide also. And most of the information I have not added this because the slide is very small. So you all can you all can go to the website of NIDM, which is given at the bottom of the slide, nidm.gov.in, and you all can use the resources, the rich resources of NIDM from its website for your research purpose, for your knowledge purpose, basically awareness purpose. So if I would like to mention here a few documentation examples, like NIDM has documented Cyclone Yas, which was in 2021, Cyclone Fani 2019, lessons learned, Kerala floods 2018, the floods challenges and its management, case study of Gujarat floods 2017, heat wave in India, documentation of state of Telangana and Odisha 2016, and also Uttarakhand disaster 2013. So most of the things have been covered, and most of the things are available in NIDM's website. You all can go to this website and use the resources, use the knowledge in your day-to-day life. So I would like to conclude here my presentation with one quote and with one question. I would like to leave our participant today with one question, that I have mentioned here the initiatives taken by our government, what are the climate change and the initiatives which have been taken by our government at the national level as well as at the international level. So I would like to leave our participant with one question, that what initiatives are being taken by us towards DRR, towards climate change, etc. And I would like to cite here one quote, that if you really think that the environment is less important than the economy, try holding your breath while you count your money. So thank you very much once again for giving me this opportunity. That's all from my side. Thanks. Over to you, Nisita.
Thank you, sir, for making us know more about climate change and their impact on ecosystem and initiatives taken. And you have also told us about goals and adaptation, several evidences for causes of climate changes, solution and approaches to climate change mitigation. So we are all very grateful of you, sir, for sharing your
Thank you.
precious knowledge with us.
Thank you very
Now,
much.
if anyone have any queries, please drop questions.
Yeah, Harshit, very nice presentations, because here is no questions in the chat box, but your presentation is really good.
Thank you very
it
much,
will
sir.
be useful for all the professionals and the youngster, basically, who is know about the and want to know about the sustainable development goals or something, and how it will be related to the climate change.
Yes.
So it is the really good, and
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
so this is the things, and today we are reached to the end of the session.
Yeah.
Already we are running very late in this session. So I request all the participants, they can write their name and their affiliation in the chat box. And meanwhile, I am going to the bind up this one. So today we are getting to the 4 lectures. First one is the Professor Joseph Selvin, Head Department of the Microbiology, School of the Life Sciences, Pondicherry. And he is talk about this so many things, the explorations, exploitations, and the extinction. In the continuation of the second lecture, the Professor J.K. Garg, Director, Tribhuvan University, Tribhuvan College of the Environmental Development Sciences. It is the center of the Nalanda University. He talked about the wetland restoration and disaster management. Next, Ms. Fatima, young professional NIDM, talk about the ecosystem and the community-based disaster management. And our today's last speaker, Mr. Harshit Sharma, young professional in the NIDM, is talk about the climate change impact on ecosystem initiation taken by the BDR. So it is about, we are the complete almost 2 days, and the 1 day is the left, is the next. So next day and the last Thursday, the Dr. L.S. Rawat, scientist in the G.B. Pant National Institute of the Himalayan Environment, will be give the first lecture, and second lecture will be the Dr. Kavita Singh, assistant professor in the Mata Sundari College, University of Delhi, and third lecture will be the Mr. Himanshu Kumar, PhD student in IIT Delhi. He will be talk about the sustainability and sustainability approaches. So these will be the total structure of this one, and after that the validatory session. So I request all of you to join tomorrow 2 p.m. sharp. Thank you each and everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome, and thank you, Harshit. Welcome, and thank you both will be together. Yeah, and Mimi and Ankita, Nishita, you are the well done. And all the participants, thank you so much.